This is the Law Review Subcommittee meeting, June 10th, 2013. The time is 9:01. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
First, we'll have roll call. In Las Vegas, who is there?
Linda Zeziger.
Good morning, Linda. In Reno, it's Perry Nixdorf. Staff at present in Reno is
Gary Henry, Executive Director.
in Las Vegas.
Gloria Alexander, Office Manager.
Deborah Blasco, Accountant.
Excellent. And I have a message from Jeanette Benaldi, who said she'll be 15 minutes late, so we'll introduce her when she gets here. All right, that takes care of roll call. Comments by the general public would be next. Do I have any comments about anything that's not on the agenda or on the agenda?
I did bring.
Yeah.
The microphone.
And state your name, and the microphone is actually right here because they're having technical difficulties. So you can stand right there where that is, and this microphone will pick you up just fine.
Okay, I'm Amy Christensen, and I did bring a review of the hours to reduce them to 1600 that I was told to at the last subcommittee meeting.
Oh, excellent. Do you have a copy for us
I do.
to share?
This,
All right.
and then this is the old to the new.
Oh, excellent. All right. We will add that to our list when we get to that topic.
All right.
Thank you very much. All right. Any public comments in Las Vegas? Seeing none, we'll move on. All right, item number 3, consideration and approval of the agenda and its posting.
It has been
Has the
posted.
agenda been...
Yes, it has been posted in accordance with Nevada open meeting law requirements.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to number 4, review and possibly formulate revisions.
There's, even though there's only you and Linda, if you would call for a motion second and pass it. 'cause
Oh,
it
yes,
doesn't
yes.
work.
Okay, so I'll call for a motion on the agenda. And Linda, since you're the only one there, would you mind?
Motion the agenda be approved.
Linda, can you hear me?
Did you turn your mic on?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was on. I make a motion that
Okay.
the agenda be approved.
Okay. I'll second that, and I guess we vote. Aye.
Aye.
So passed. All right, moving on to number 4. Review and possibly formulate revisions for submission to the 2015 legislature to NRS 6440233, Cosmetologist Apprentice Defined. This statute may be too broad and require redefining. While there are definitions of cosmetologist apprentice and electrologist apprentice, there are no provisions made for hair designer, nail technician, or esthetician's apprentices, which are also licenses available under the NRS statutes. This should be included in provisions made for them within the general provision definitions of NRS 644.02XX. The other NRS statutes that may be affected and possibly revised are 644.190, 644.204, 644.205, 644.207, 644.210, 644.217, 644.2175, 644.408, 644.430. All right, so this is because Gloria at the time thought that this might be a bit broad, and I totally agree with her. I think that if we have the possibility to provide apprentices, we should allow everyone to have apprentices. And I thought this would be a good thing for us to discuss. And it looks like, Linda, you and I are going to be the ones months discussing this. Jeanette will be here, she says, in about 10 minutes.
Okay.
All right. So the NRS 6440233 Cosmetologist Apprentice defined says, Cosmetologist Apprentice means a person who is engaged in learning the occupation of a cosmetologist in a cosmetological establishment and who is registered with the board to practice cosmetology as a cosmetologist apprentice. That one doesn't define, it looks to me like they're all separate because you have cosmetology demonstrator, electrologist apprentice, hair braiding defined, and so I think that for this we should recommend that we create a apprentice defined as a separate NRS and not try to redefine each and add into it. For instance, under cosmetologist apprentice, we could say a cosmetologist apprentice means any person who is engaged in the learning of an occupation within the branch of cosmetology and is a and in a cosmetological establishment. We could do that, or we could create individual subheadings or individual NRSs for each one. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I would say it probably should be all defined out and all taken out and issued, listed separately. That's my
I'm
thought.
kind of inclined to do the same thing. Does it make, for a question for the staff, it would be easier for you to create NACs if there were individual NRSs for each branch of cosmetologists, would it not? Or does it make a difference?
Gary Landry, Executive Director, I don't think it would be any more work one way or the other to do that initially. To administer it, we do it on a separate, one-by-one basis anyway, so whatever the board sees fit as far as creating a separate apprentice section, that we administer that, or if there's a separate apprentice for each sub-practice, cosmetology, nail techs, the administration of that from staff standpoint would not be larger one way or the other. It would probably be more work involved in setting it up initially if we did it each one separate and have to write the NAC, do the NRS changes in NACs to set it up. If they were all broken out separately rather than one group, it would certainly be more work, but that's a one-time, it's a one-time work effort.
Okay. All right. So let's start by considering the ramifications of changing 233 to incorporate everything, and those changes and how those would affect things.
Harry, excuse me.
Yes.
You are definitely considered, it has to be in a cosmetological establishment, though. You're not looking at anything otherwise than that.
Correct.
I mean, you're not saying it's an apprentice in any way but in an establishment.
Correct.
And it
I'm
has to
not
be
changing
licensed.
anything up.
And it has to be
Correct.
licensed.
They are would-be licensees who are getting their education in a salon pursuant to all the other regulations that we currently have going on.
Okay.
In other words, all I want to do is be able to allow someone in a rural area to apprentice as a nail technician or as an esthetician or as a hair designer and not go for the entire cosmetology apprentice. And that would be the only, that's all I'm trying to do here.
Oh, this has nothing to do, it has to be in a rural area, is that what you're saying?
Well, so far, we're still going with the 60-mile radius from the nearest school, so that hasn't changed. So at this moment in time, yes, it would be rural relative to the 60-mile radius that is currently defined in statute.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it looks like Jeanette's coming in here, so. Good morning, Jeanette.
Good morning. This is it from Carson?
This is it from Carson, and Linda Zessinger is the one in Vegas at the moment.
Okay, everybody's so excited about being here on Monday.
Yes, we are. We're very excited. And where we are, is we are on item number 4,
Okay.
and we are reviewing the possibility of creating new and separate NRSs for each of the subcategories under, such as a new NRS for a nail technician or an esthetician or for a designer, or do we modify this one statute here to incorporate all of the subcategories?
Well, my personal opinion is I think we should keep it simple.
Right.
Did one, Jeanette could announce her name and she just went for the record.
Okay.
Jeanette Minaldi, board member here.
Okay, let the roll call reflect that. All right, so simplicity-wise, we're trying to figure that out. So what we're deciding first is what the ramifications are if we put all of those items into this one statute and make one simple redefined statute versus adding new statutes. But we also have the electrologist's apprentice over here, because what they've done in the past is under 6440265, they merely said, they defined it as electrologist's apprentice means a person engaged in learning the occupation of electrologist in a cosmetological establishment. We could just take that and just duplicate that and say nail technician's apprentice defined as boom, 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 and just go right down the list and create that. Or we can add it into 233. So if we were to do this,
So electrologists are almost obsolete, aren't they?
almost,
How many do you think we have?
we have 4.
4 in the state of Nevada?
Yes.
Is there any schools now?
Yeah,
Is
that-
it simply by apprenticeship? That's how they're learning it.
Correct. But that's not what we're.
Coming in from there are other states who may still have electrologist schools.
Okay.
So they can come in through reciprocity.
Right, and we will be discussing whether or not we should keep electrologists in the statutes at a later meeting. But the concept of just adding an NRS with a definition for electrologist and an electrologist definition, apprentice defined as in 265, seems to be what the legislatures in the past have approved. So maybe we should just...
People being what they are, I think that we should stick with that then. Because we do want to allow apprentices.
Yes. Okay. Linda, any input from you?
No. I'm fine.
Good morning, Linda.
What, hon?
She said good
She's-
morning.
Good morning, Linda.
She's the
Morning,
only one
Jeanette.
sitting behind that big podium.
I have the whole thing to myself here. No, I think that I'm fine with adding a definition for each one of them.
I think based on the past, what's currently approved in these statutes, I think we'd probably have a better chance of having that done. All right, so let's go with NRS 6440277 is where hair designer defined is. And how did they do this here? The electrologist, they just added a 5 at the end of that. All right, so we're going to, for our own records, so we can keep track of this stuff, create NRS 644.02775. And that would be then called hair designer apprentice defined. Alright, so with hair designer apprentice defined, it says we'll just take it just right off of the electrologist, where it says electrologist apprentice means a person engaged in the learning the occupation of an electrologist in a cosmetological establishment. We'll just say hair designer apprentice means a person engaged in learning the occupation of a hair designer in a cosmetological establishment. Any discussion on that?
No.
Mm-mm. So basically what we're doing is we're separating all these definitions so that it's clearer for what they are.
Correct.
And then, but obtaining an apprenticeship is something that I think needs to be looked at. Is that something we're going over as well?
No.
Just this, just defining.
Just defining so that when someone comes to the board and says, I don't want to be a cosmetologist, I just want to be a nail technician, or I want to be an esthetician, and they live out in Battle Mountain, that they don't have to do the entire cosmetology as they currently do. They would have to do the entire cosmetology program of 3,000 hours in that location. And we think it's important that they be able to do their 1,200 hours to do their esthetician versus the 3,000 hours.
Whatever current obligation there is in each modality, okay.
Correct, and then it allows us to do that. So
Okay.
that's where we want to go with today's
Good start.
discussion. Yeah. Future discussions will be future discussions. All right, so then what we're going to, so let me just write that down for myself here. Okay, it's going to be called hair designer apprentice. Means any person who engages, no, who engage, any person engaged in learning the occupation of a hair designer in a cosmetological establishment. Okay, I think that's pretty straightforward. Yes?
Gary Landry, Executive Director. The one thing I would make a comment on, just a very minor technicality, instead of saying any person, but a person, because that's consistent with the definitions there.
Okay.
A person.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
It doesn't make
that.
it's not a great deal of difference, but to be consistent with it, all of this will go before LCB. They will
Correct.
scrub it as far as their attorneys will say whether it's consistent and all that.
Yeah.
Just so we read exactly the same.
Okay, that works for me. All right, so that would be 4, and then since the next one in the book here is nail technologist defined, we'll do exactly the same thing, and we'll create a NRS 6440295, and that would say nail technologist apprentice defined. And that would read exactly the same. It would say nail technologist apprentice means a person engaged in learning the occupation of a hair designer in a cosmetological establishment.
Instead of hair designer, it would be nail
Technologist.
technologist, okay.
Yes, exactly.
All right,
Nail technologist.
so and so on, so we have. And we're not gonna continue on to threading.
No, but we want to go into esthetician, so we need to find, is there a definition for esthetician? Should-
Okay, there's dermatologist.
Yes, 0205. Esthetician defined. Very first.
Just. Do you have a different book? What page are you on, Gary, or what?
Maybe on
Two.
I didn't bring the book, I did it just from that.
Oh, okay.
It says 025.
Yeah, 0.0205 is esthetician defined.
Can I see your book?
Sure.
Do I have an old book?
It's alphabetical from the very first.
Which one?
It should be on the very first page of definitions.
Which,
Um,
Harry, excuse me.
Esthetician defined, there it is. You're right, okay.
General.
Got it, okay.
Harry,
Way back.
excuse me. What-
Yes.
Where do we have, what NRS states that it's 50 miles?
60.
I was.
60 miles.
50 miles is an apprentice. They have to be 50 miles from a school.
60.
It's the one that I
60.
argued against many
60.
meetings ago, saying I should
60?
be subjected to it.
Okay, it's 60 miles, not 50. Thank you. I was
Right,
corrected.
and, I think it's a little further on here. I have that, it should be listed in one of these here. I usually do this stuff on my computer, and I can do the search and find it really easy. See, just flipping through this.
Maria, do you know? No, you don't know which NRS it is?
NRS
Application,
board
here
that
it is,
says, an NRS that says it has to be
Yeah, here it
60
is.
miles
It's
away.
644.217.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so next on the list, we will go to 644.02055. And that would be esthetician apprentice defined. And that would be exactly the same, where it would say esthetician apprentice means a person engaged in learning the occupation of an esthetician in a cosmetological establishment. And that would cover all three of those. Now, what ramifications does that have on things like 217?
Question, so those are the three branches you're going to do. You're leaving off hair braiding as far as the apprentice program?
Yes. Linda, would you like to
Okay,
step up and say we need a hair braiding apprentice or not?
no. I don't have any thoughts on that one.
Isn't it all taught by apprenticeship now? It's not taught in schools, correct? There's no class for hair braiding. So,
No, you don't.
and threading as well. That's all, that's all.
That's all already,
Apprenticeship.
that's already done that way, right?
Okay.
So we will not be creating a definition for hair braider apprentice, to make that clear. All right, so I put down, I went through and let's see here, we did 644, 204, 205, 207, 210.
217.
Yeah, I went through and looked at all the different ones that might possibly be affected by this, and let's start with the one that I listed, which was 190. 190 is unlawful practices without license exceptions. I don't think Section 1 would be affected. Section 2. I think that works. This chapter does not prohibit. It does say under 3B, an electrologist apprentice from participating in a course of practical training and study.
Also section E that speaks to the cosmetologist apprentice.
From engaging in the practice of cosmetology under the immediate supervision of a licensed cosmetologist. So perhaps
Maybe we could do comma, licensed cosmetologist, manicurist and esthetician.
Yeah, I believe that.
Comma there?
I think we could do that. Okay, so I'd like to propose that under NRS 644-190 3E that we add after registered cosmetologist apprentice, we would say comma, and then let's do it in the order that it is in the book. So we do esthetician, esthetician's apprentice, comma, hair designer apprentice, comma, nail technician apprentice,
We're still leaving cosmetologist there.
correct, it is, this would be
As
inserted at the end of, or right behind the word cosmetologist's apprentice, comma,
Okay.
esthetician's apprentice, comma, hair designer apprentice, comma, nail technician apprentice, comma, from engaging in the practice of cosmetology under the immediate supervision of a licensed cosmetologist. That would have to be changed. In the practice,
Well, I think it's all subject to cosmetology, so
Yeah.
could we say,
well, it would matter if a person were a hair designer or a nail technologist and they were in a nail salon, they wouldn't be under the supervision of a licensed cosmetologist, they would be under the supervision of a licensed nail technician.
but wait a minute, you have to have a licensed cosmetologist overseeing your salon at all times. So would that be the same?
It's not the same because in a nail salon, you have to have a licensed
Oh, there's
nail
a nail salon.
technician
It's true.
who can supervise all the nail technicians. So in theory, that we would have to broaden this,
You could have,
or just simply add F.
F, G, and H could be for each one of them. You know, it's with the exact same language except I think here that, it would agree cosmetologist apprentice under cosmetology licensure, a nail
Correct.
tech under nail tech licensure, and a hair designer under hair designer licensure.
Expand that 3 months.
Yeah, let's, okay, that makes it simple, easy for everybody to understand, easy to administrate, easy for a non-cosmetologist to understand. All right, let's do that. Okay, so scratch the idea of putting a comma afterwards and just put in E. I'm going to add F, G, and H, all of them with the identical language except relative to their own field. So F would be esthetician, so it would read a registered esthetician's apprentice from engaging in the practice of aesthetics under the immediate supervision of a licensed esthetician. Okay, and G would be hair designer. So it would read a registered hair designer apprentice, or hair designer's apprentice, from engaging in the practice of hair designing under the immediate supervision of a licensed hair designer. And H would be nail technician, and it would read a registered nail technician's apprentice from engaging in the practice of nail technology under the immediate supervision of a licensed nail technologist.
And just to be clear, these are exceptions.
And these are exceptions. These are nothing more than providing consistent rules throughout the book when we add something like our separate apprentices. Okay.
I think that's really good. So,
All right. So what? All right. So what next here?
it's already listed in this here.
I don't think 4 and 5 would have anything that needs to be modified there. Okay, the next one I have on my list is 644204. Okay, hair designer's qualifications for examination, nail technologist. Why did I put this on there? Because under 644200, it states item 5D, completion of at least 3,600 hours of service as a cosmetologist apprentice in a licensed cosmetological establishment in which all the occupations of cosmetology are practiced. The required hours must have been completed during the period of validity of the certificate of registration as a cosmetologist apprentice issued to the person pursuant to NRS 644.217. I think that for each of the other ones, we need to have that statement under 644204, 205, and 207. They each need their own segment. Now, these are basically double the hours, so we can be consistent with that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So hair designers, it says here, require 1,200 hours, so we would like to add a 5D. All right, so under NRS 204, we will add, or recommend that we add 5D, and 5D would place the hours at 2,400 hours and have all the other language of 644.200 modified, so it would say completion of at least 2,400 hours of service as a hair designer's apprentice in a licensed cosmetological establishment in which the occupation of hair designer is practiced. Are there salons, just out of as a question, are there salons that are only hair designers, so like Great Clips and things like that? Do we have salons that we license as hair designing salons?
All salons are licensed as cosmetological establishments, just because that's NRS.
Right.
Cosmetological establishment, but they are licensed to practice what they're qualified for. So if you're only going to be practicing hair design, you'll be licensed to practice that, and no other.
Got it. So there could be a circumstance in which a salon chooses to be a hair designer only salon, and they could then have an apprentice, and so we would have to make.
And you could have, because of the language that you have in here, where it's a cosmetological license and where you specifically say hair design is practiced, you could run into a situation where you have a nail salon hair design combo that does not have estheticians on board that would be legal under this. So if they want to do hair design, as long as hair design was one of the practices in the salon under a licensed hair designer, or like the or would have to be or licensed cosmetologist, because a licensed cosmetologist is allowed to teach hair design in an apprentice program.
Yes, so I think we could do that. Okay, so picking up under licensed cosmetological establishment in which the occupation of hair designer is practiced.
Well, isn't it, when you license your salon, you actually list all the things you're going to be doing in your salon, or is that just business license? It's been a while.
You list them if you're a non-cosmetologist.
Okay.
Because you can actually own a salon, a licensed salon, without being a cosmetologist, nail tech, or you can be a business person.
Okay, and then you open a salon,
Correct.
but you do need to delineate what you're doing,
That's
what
correct.
practices you're following.
If you're going to offer all services, you must have a licensed cosmetologist.
Okay, so if they think, okay, well, I'm a hair salon now, but I want to bring in, even though we're under cosmetology, I'm going to bring in a nail gal, and I want her to have an apprentice. It's not listed, so they wouldn't be able to do it. But they could go back and relicense rather than change the law.
Right.
They could just relicense.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Correct. And we just want to make sure that each thing is covered well, so that nobody runs into an unforeseen obstacle or an unsurmountable obstacle. They should be able to do. We need to make it fairly easy for some of these people to get into the profession.
One of the things, just so that Gary and Andrew, Executive Director, and keep identifying, one of the things that we will do, whatever language you come up with to move forward to the board, I'll have Annie and the inspection staff look at it, because and also Lori and the licensing staff, they'll scrub through it, and they can present if this goes forward to a regular board meeting, they can then present at that time tweaks to the wording so that it complies with the practice of what we're doing. They'll check it against NAC and all of that also.
That would be great.
That would be helpful.
That would be very helpful, but we would like that at the committee meetings before it goes to the...
Sure, we can bring it
Yeah,
in.
before the board meeting, yeah. That would be good, then we can just sort of keep tweaking it until the final package that we present is a complete, good package.
Okay.
All right, so what are we saying here? The occupation of hair designer is practiced. Linda, do you have any comments on that? Is that
No.
okay with you?
No,
No comments, correct? Not,
No comments.
Not okay.
the way you're wording it sounds good. I mean, if you're adding it on to each one of them, that's my impression, right?
That is correct. That is
Okay.
correct. And we're creating the specific language for hair designer right now. Okay, the next line would say the required hours must have been completed during the period of validity of the certificate of registration as a hair designer's apprentice issued to the person pursuant to 644-217. Let's look at 217 real quick to make sure that we don't have any conflicts there. Application for certificate of registration. The board may issue a certificate of registration as a cosmetologist apprentice if 60 miles training of a person be conducted in a licensed cosmetological establishment. Board which could cause waive $100 fee. Okay, there'll be a few things we probably need to add or tweak in here, but by and large, I'm not looking to change this. We would be just adding a little bit of language, I think, to make it clear that we're talking about all cosmetological apprentices, and because they have separate electrologist apprentice application for registration fees. They've got they have these things separated out a little bit.
I was just thinking that for the cosmetological apprentices, if you group that, it would include hair braiding and threading because it's part of the other.
Correct. You know what we could do maybe to simplify this just a little bit? We could simplify this by defining cosmetologist apprentice. And I think we could probably...
Then we could live them.
I don't know, see, we've
Or
already done...
excluding hair braiding
See,
and threading.
we just did that. We just changed the definitions to be all separate.
Well, if we started off with one law that defined and kind of had little individual groupings, then couldn't we loop them together under that particular heading rather than changing all the laws?
We can do pretty much anything we feel like we want to propose to be done. And we should do what we think is easy for the staff to administer and for the public to understand.
Well, if we define apprenticeship as available to hair designers, cosmetologists, SDs, and manicurists, and then keeping those obligatory hair braiding and
Just a
Threading.
suggestion, I think if you want to keep it very clear, I would probably keep it separate.
they're really separate.
What that would mean is you'd have the equivalent of 217, 2175, that combination.
Yeah.
Each of the three next.
That's-
We can certainly, for
Well-
the next meeting, we could write this up, show some of that, back to you if you wish.
Let's just move forward the way we're going, and
For government's sake, needs to be very specific.
very, very specific, absolutely. So what we will do is this NRS 2 and the last word in 644-200-5D being NRS 644-217. Let's just make that. We'll come back and refine that word when we look at 644-217 separately from what we're doing right now. Okay?
Or 200.
Yeah. All right, so what we've done is we've added NRS 644-204-5, right? no, we're talking cosmetologist qualifications for examination. We've just merely added 5D to state to be exactly the same as 205D, except with 2,400 hours and the wordage related to hair designers, with the possible change of the NRS 217 to be maybe 2175 or whatever we come up with when we get there. Okay? All right, so then any comments, suggestions, discussion on that, on 2045D being added?
No, that's fine.
Okay, any comments from the public? No? Okay. All right, so next would be 644205. Again, we would go to subsection 5. And being that they have 600 hours, we would do 5C for 1,200 hours. And so it would read, completion of at least 1,200 hours of service as a nail technician's apprentice in a licensed cosmetological establishment in which the occupation of nail technologist is practiced. The required hours must have been completed during the period of validity of the certificate of registration as a nail technologist's apprentice issued to the person pursuant to NRS 644217, possibly 6 or 7 or whatever. Any comment, discussion, or anything of that nature on that?
No.
Okay. All right, moving on. Esthetician qualifications for examination, NRS 644207. 644207, and that would be under 5, and it looks like since there's no other things, that would be 5A. Being that they require 900 hours, we would require 1,800 hours. And it would read, completion of at least 1,800 hours of service as an esthetician's apprentice in a licensed cosmetological establishment in which the occupation of esthetician is practiced. The required hours must have been completed during the period of validity of the certificate of registration as an esthetician's apprentice issued to the person pursuant to NRS 644.217X. All right, moving right along. 210 is what I thought something needed to be done. All right, so we're going to be looking at NRS 644.210, application required for examination, license, or certificate of registration fee to obtain forms, contents, verification. I don't know why I put that in there, but
It does require registration as a cosmetologist apprentice.
oh yeah, there it is, yes.
You could add the other apprenticeships in the same section.
And I think this one would be simple for a certificate of registration as a cosmetologist apprentice, comma, or esthetician's apprentice, comma, or hair designer's apprentice, comma, or nail technician's apprentice, comma, must be made in writing on forms furnished by the board and must be submitted within the period designated by the board. Does that sound okay, Linda?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so then that's what we'll do. We'll add the, you write down what I just said. Okay. Next on the list would be 217. All right, under 217, this is where cosmetologist apprentice. Application for certificate of registration, waiver, fee, expiration, and renewal of certificate of registration. The board may issue a certificate of registration as a cosmetologist apprentice to a person if.
And we'll add comma. Same thing.
Yeah, okay, so the simple thing, let's start with the simple thing, just to just add at the end of well, what we would have to do is we could go back to, in the title, instead of cosmetologist's apprentice, we could put cosmetology apprentice. Because that would then incorporate the broader aspect of all of the practices within cosmetology.
I would probably list them separately in 217, just across, just because you haven't defined the term cosmetology apprentice.
Really?
So unless you put that definition in NRS, you might be better off just listing all of them, so that they need to know clearly what it incorporates instead of having to interpret.
It's a very long title.
Yes. The alternatives, you could take 217 and 2175 and repeat those for the 3 apprenticeships.
We could. They did it over here. Let's see here.
And I'm not sure why 215, which is an metrologist apprentice, is so short, and the cosmetology apprentice has 2 sections and is very long. I don't know the justification behind that in the lawmakers' minds. It was very short for the metrologist apprentice, but the cosmetologist apprentice, it is spelled out in 2 separate sections.
Right.
Quite long.
Well, like under 3A, it says a statement must be signed by the licensed cosmetologist who will be supervising and training the cosmetologist apprentice. I think it would be easier if we just did what we were doing before and just created a new NRS 2171, 2172, 2173. Or, they put it under, because they've already got 2175 here, display of certificate of registration.
You can
Yeah.
renumber and change.
Yeah, they'll do that more. This is more for our sake. They'll number whatever they want to number. But for our sake, let's just call it 217. All right, I'm going to go with creating a new NRS for each apprentice category, which would then in turn have its own specific language so that everything is consistent and clear, instead of putting a bunch of ors, ands, and things like that into it. But then again, we could, being that, hang on. So B, the training of a person as a cosmetologist apprentice, that would have to be changed.
Could you just take out cosmetologist and put apprentice?
you know?
Person's apprentice.
As we could do that. The training of a person as an apprentice will be conducted at a licensed cosmetological establishment. That has to be consistent, that's good. And the applicant for a certificate, a statement must be signed by the, could we put practitioner in there?
You have to define practitioner.
We would, yeah, the licensed, what do we call a hair designer or a nail technician that's in charge of a salon? Or in charge of a nail salon?
Charge of it, or? Like,
Yeah, but the nail technician in charge, is that what they're called, or do we call them?
I don't think there's any special definition for who in charge you must have. If you have a nail technology establishment, you're a non-nail technologist owner, or an owner who's not present, you must have a licensed nail technologist present. So
Right,
that-
which would be, that would be the person, what do we call the person who is, what do we call the cosmetologist who has the apprentice? What do we call that? Do we have a name? Can we define that name?
Just a licensed cosmetologist or a licensed nail tech. That they just have to, you know, by definition, they have to be licensed to be able to have an apprentice. That's the only definition so far in NRS prior to any of these changes. To be, if you're a licensed cosmetologist, you're outside of 60 miles. The person who's apprenticing is more than 60 miles from the school. You can then apply for, the NRS currently, you can apply for a cosmetologist apprentice. And that, there's no special title or anything, you just have to be licensed.
Well, could we define an apprentice instructor? If we define an apprentice instructor, then we could have a statement signed by the apprentice instructor who will be supervising, or not instructor, let's go supervisor, so they don't have, so that we don't have any conflict with the word instructor. We could say apprentice supervisor.
Should we say
Well,
licensed?
doesn't instructor have to be a cosmetologist? Oh, no, you're saying that it would be any of them.
Yeah, what I'm thinking of is instead of creating all these lots of wordage in here, if we define who the supervising person is, this statement here is a statement signed by the licensed apprentice supervisor and training the cosmetologist. Let's see here. Let's see, who will be supervising? Yeah, if we just put in apprentice supervisor instead of the word cosmetologist, who will be supervising the training, the cosmetologist, who will be supervising and training the cosmetologist, which states that the licensed cosmetologist has been licensed by the board to practice cosmetology in this state for no less than 3 years.
Can't say instructor, I think.
No, we can't say, yes,
Supervisor.
yeah, I don't want to say instructor, that gets too convoluted with schools.
Mhm.
But supervisor,
Licensed supervisor, I like that.
mhm.
Now, where would that be held in definition? Before?
Yeah, that would go back in the very beginning. We'd have to recreate it. We'd have to create a new definition.
Versus excuse me, Gary, do you think that it matters as far as legislation goes if we create all these different subcategories, or do you think it matters to them whether we redefine?
I don't think it matters to them. Whatever will be most clear, if they can read through it and be most clear, they can have their aides, you know, their staff, read it and see it very straightforward. Even though it's a lot more wording, it adds a lot more words to the NRS. My personal preference would be to have them each separate, because when you start having a matrix of nail tech can be supervised by a licensed cosmetologist or a nail technician, we have to do all those definitions in the front part of the definition section of NRS. That may get a little more complicated for them to refer back and forth to interpret.
I think you're right there as well, because under subsection 4, we have a cosmetologist apprentice is valid for 2 years. And that would be, considering 1,800 hours is basically a 1-year term, right? We could change that for each of the terms of each one to
be shorter. Any one that takes less hours
be shorter.
So it'd have to be looked at and placed individually. And
Yeah. Okay, so let's do that.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So much as I hate to make all this paperwork, but
Yeah.
all right.
Expand
644.
that book. Pretty soon we're going to need 2 books.
Yes. 644-2171 for our own purposes, not for necessarily what they want to do. All right. The changes we would make, it would say esthetician's apprentice. Okay, that would be a change, period. Application for certificate of registration, waiver, fee, expiration, and renewal of certificate of registration. The board may issue the board may issue a certificate of registration as an esthetician's apprentice. Change. Okay. So, 1A, the person is required to travel more than 60 miles from his or her place of residence to attend a licensed school of cosmetology. Do we want to open up that can of worms today? No. And change that, or make that something different? I think that at the time, the board made it clear that they were not willing to make those exceptions for me. I would think they probably don't want to make those exceptions at this point in time. And being that there's only 3 of us here,
I do not want to change it.
I'm not inclined to bring that up and to make any changes there personally at this moment in time. Jude?
I think there should be some pause there, because after you brought it up, I've talked to several people about it, and there are individuals that are in your situation that you brought up that really can't quit working, and they really want to be an apprentice, or they want to learn cosmetology or whatever. But the fact of the matter is people can't quit working right now. It's a tough gig.
It's a tough gig for a low-paying job.
It is, and after they get out, it's hard to catch up. It's they start them off if they pay them by the hour, which since there's only 2 of us, do that.
Soon to be more. All right.
I don't know.
We were talking about this a little bit before, and that basically is about the transition from a person who's a non-cosmetologist to a functioning cosmetologist who's earning money, right? Enough to make a living. That transition is very difficult for some of these people. Part of that difficulty is the amount of time they spend in school, and that the inability for them to really hold down a second job to get through school quickly. The other part of it is once they get out, there's little to no advanced education possible for them, right? It makes it difficult for us to hire them, and there's lots to go with that.
I don't think it's a threat for schools, because very few people could even do that, especially under the laws, and as you can see how complicated that is. But I think for somebody that was willing to take it on, I think it should be looked at. You are talking about 1%, but
yeah, we're talking about 1%. What we're talking about is this is a impediment to a few people. Now, really, and to put this in perspective, the number of apprentices we have are very small too. So we're dealing about a situation here where we're really talking about a very small segment of the population, and this then becomes an even smaller segment of that population, in my opinion. And so as long as the requirements are the same for everyone, I don't see how,
I think it puts an encumberment on people that really would like to be a hairdresser, but yet they can't quit working, or they need to be paid while they're working, and I don't know. So I guess the theory would be, if we had more people that were doing that, would that create a threat? Because they still have to
And
graduate, and they still have to go through all the testing, and they still have to go through, and if it was limited, or could that be expanded upon? I mean, I don't want it to threaten schools, because I think that primarily schools would be our best bet, always. So, I don't know, maybe it is something that needs to be taken a look at, but on the other hand, it's gonna be, I think we need to do research on it. And really look at the different outcomes.
Well, we have two people representing the schools in the audience. Would it be okay if I brought them forward to get their...
I mean, you can ask for public comment.
All right, so could I get some public comment? Because you probably both have very different opinions on that. So, could I get your opinion on...
Well,
Your name was?
Probably closer to the city than Las Vegas.
Amy Christensen, representing Palm Beach School Reno. I appreciate if you would go back to defining the cosmetologist apprentice rather than just cosmetology apprentice, which would encompass all of them, because cosmetology is already defined as encompassing all of the hair design, esthetician, and everything. So if you change the cosmetologist apprentice, got rid of that NRS, and just did cosmetology apprentice and defined that, that would solve all of this issue.
Well, we've talked about that, and the challenge is the legislators need it to be more simplified. I agree with you, because it seems simple enough,
Yeah.
because we're involved in it, but for people that aren't involved in it, apparently they need it very, very clear.
Yeah, and the other part of it is in something as simple as this number 4 where it says 2 years, right? Well, a nail technician wouldn't, I mean...
No,
We
nobody
will-
had.
Right, we want to take and create some specific rules for specific professions that don't fall under that general umbrella. I mean, I'd love to make this really super
Really
simple,
easy.
okay?
Right,
Really
right.
easy. But at the moment, I'm interested in this 60 miles. If we allowed cosmetology apprentices to be next door, across the street, down the street, across the town, versus 60 miles from the nearest location, is there any objection on your part to that?
Yes, there is.
And what would your objection be?
That would deprive the schools from having applicable students, because they go to school for the required amount of time for their cosmology, whatever cosmological, whatever they're pursuing, training they're pursuing. That would deprive each individual school of individual students. Say there was 5 apprentices at each salon, there's 718 in the northern Nevada. That would essentially put all of the schools out of business if I, as a cosmetologist or somebody, would be allowed to teach somebody else without getting the proper training through the state board to be a licensed instructor.
I would even say not getting proper training.
Yeah, I'll give you your moment in a minute because I do want to hear your opinion as well.
I mean, I mean, I don't have a problem with the 60s, fine, because that's for everyone, like in Hawthorne and everywhere else that they cannot get to a school, which would be inconvenient for them. But people that are, say, in Carson or in Reno, or Sparks and the outlying cities, I mean, they're all going to go to the schools. I mean, they're all that are all in those areas, rather than, let's say they're in Winnemucca, they're going to go. They would rather go to. That's a place that they would rather go to an apprentice program, because there's not a school out there.
Got it. All right. Thank you very much, Rodney.
People might take advantage.
Exactly.
I'm Rodney Moore with Carson City Beauty Academy, licensed cosmetologist, licensed instructor as well. I think the problem with having an apprentice in the salon right next door to us, just like Christina said, is that it takes away from the schools. I'm a licensed cosmetologist, like I just stated, and I had to go back to school to get my instructor's license, and who's to say that these guys that are training, I guess, what they call it, apprentices or whoever, cosmetologists who's actually doing the training, who's to say that they're actually qualified to even be a trainer?
Correct.
I mean, I'm just saying that I know Perry's a good instructor, I've seen him train. But did Perry go and get are you an instructor as well? I'm not sure.
No, I'm not.
See, I think, but you have qualifications to train, but I think that everyone that goes out to apprentice should be under a licensed cosmetology instructor, not just a cosmetologist. Each cosmetologist have different ways of training. We all know that because we've been in the field.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. I have.
You could ask for.
Yeah. Is there some? Yeah. I forget.
Yes, we have
Thank you
representation.
very much, Rodney. All right.
Larry, we have representation
in Las
here.
Vegas. Yes, I would like to hear from the schools there.
Yes,
Anybody that would like to step forward and give us their opinion on the 60-mile radius.
Up here? Yeah. Well, representing Euphoria Institute, I just think that with an apprenticeship that is near a school, it's really going to be the destruction of the school. I mean, it's really quite simple. I think that it's reasonable that if there is not a school within the radius of 60 miles, then the apprenticeship should hold true. But I think if there isn't, and the student can make their way as they have since I've been a licensed cosmetologist 1977, I don't see why it should change.
Thank you. Any more? Would you like any more? No? Anybody else?
yes, just a moment.
Sandy Dunham, Academy of Hair Design, Las
Morning,
Vegas.
Sandy.
Good morning. I just
Good morning.
have, what would be the benefit if I was a student, if I could go to a salon and be paid to become licensed, or I could go to a school? I mean, it would be a no-brainer. I'd probably go to a salon, but would I get the proper training? Who's ever training the apprentices in the salons, are they going to have any kind of requirements as our instructors do in our schools? Is there going to be a law, or are there going to be any rules as to how much theory? I kind of like to see more definition of the apprenticeship. I don't think we've had a real large success. I'm not sure. I've been in the business for a long, long time, as you know. I'm not sure that we even have that many licensed apprentices in the state.
I
Thank
don't
you.
know how many we have. Do you know?
That are successful.
I thought
Can I
we
ask
had like
Gloria
23
or-
or something.
Deborah, do you know?
Typically, most of the apprentice people that go under the apprentice program, very few, if any, finish. I don't know a number now.
Could you speak up, Gloria, please? We can't hear you here.
Okay, I said most of the apprentice program that I've known of, like right now, I know we have 3. Most of them do not complete the program. They stop in the middle of the program because of the number of hours. You're doubling the hours that they would have to do in a salon as opposed to going to school. So most of them either will drop out of the apprentice program and go to school and finish, or they just don't complete it at all. We have very few. At this moment, I think we have a number of like 3 apprentice people in salons.
I think so.
I have one other question.
Thank you very much, Gloria.
Can I ask one other question? I don't know if this is...
Yes, you may.
But say a student or a potential apprentice starts out with a supervising, who's ever teaching them in the salon. What if that supervisor leaves that salon and goes to another salon? What happens to the apprentice? That's another question I had.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yes, we have one more
Next.
lady.
Hi, Gwen Bramer from Expertise Cosmetology. One of my concerns were, I think we kind of had this issue in the last subcommittee meeting. It appears to me that it would be salons, it's pretty much the same as salon owners or cosmetologists training in their salons. So it would be creating mini schools all over the city. I mean, whether it's up north or down south, every salon owner, because I was a salon owner that had to apprentice. and I think I shared that before. And the good part about my 2 apprentices that were licensed, that they were self-motivated and they did the majority of their studying on their own. One of my concerns too was what curriculum. You know, in the cosmetology schools, we're required to have a curriculum. There's rules, there's sanitation, there's regulations. Who would be monitoring? What curriculum would even be used? I mean, how would the cosmetologist be able to, or the nail technologist that's going to be actually training, write a lesson plan, add supplemental to the lesson plan, be able to implement those policies and procedures that's in place as an educator. I just feel that, I mean, I didn't want to go to school at that time to get an educator's license probably 20 years ago, but I wanted to be an instructor. So that's what I did. So I think it's just fair to the school, to the student. We have students that have day and night schools all over the state. If you're working during the day, you attend school at night. If you're working at night, you attend school during the day. I mean, I'm just thinking 60 miles out, great, it's a long travel. We had students that come all the way from Pahrump. I mean, bless them, they completed. That's a long ride, but just right here in the city where there's multiple schools, I just feel personally that they need to attend a cosmetology school.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Is there anyone else there that would like to speak on this?
I would like to comment on it.
Please.
My feeling is I have a salon and it's a busy salon. If I take on an apprentice, I would not want to be responsible for saying that this person was with me constantly for, as a manicurist, would be what, 1,200 hours?
Yeah.
That if I got busy, I wouldn't be able to train her. So I'd say, oh, go over there and sit with Gloria, or go over there and sit with Barbara. And maybe they're having a good time and they're laughing and they go to lunch. I mean, I'm just giving you a scenario of my salon. I do not think that an apprentice in a beauty salon or any establishment would get the knowledge that they would need. I think they need to go to school. So that's my position. They need to attend a school.
I have a comment. I think that there is too few people that would have the time, as I agree with Linda. And the few people that could do it, it's so, it's such a small percentage. I don't think we could tip the scales in their favor for the people that, and I'm including myself, because I've often thought that might be a good program. But I think you're right. There are just so many things, and there is no curriculum set up for apprenticeship programs, that even just limiting it to 60 miles in these laws is vague at best. So I think as we're listing here, Perry, and looking at 60 miles, I think we may want to consider what kind of curriculum are these people looking at to train their people.
Those are defined in the NACs. There's a whole section on what they need to comply with.
Okay.
Okay, that's all been spelled out, so that because that subject's already been brought up.
Okay. All right. Well, I have to agree. I think they're right. It's just there's just too few people that would know how to do it.
Okay.
So
well, since we're talking about this, I'll bring up all the other things that I know about this subject, both pro and con. One is when a future cosmetologist goes into a salon, they get the point of view of the salon and only of that salon. Generally speaking, schools tend to give a broader point of view and tend to give a student more exposure to a variety of the industry, and so that's a pro for the school. Con would be there's a huge history of apprenticeship programs all throughout the world, and for hundreds of years that's how this industry has fed its need for cosmetologists to provide public service for that. And many of the countries in Europe still rely on that. England in particular, I was looking at, Germany, and they don't seem to have a problem with bad service, bad hairdressers, that kind of stuff. So there's a long history of apprenticeships. A pro for the salon, one of the reasons that I felt that I would like to do it and that it was right for me at the time was because one of the problems is taking a person who wants to come into the field of cosmetology, the path to a license is a year or more out on a full-time basis. This is a huge barrier to people who are perhaps in a career right now that are thinking about a career change but can't afford to make that change. So we tend to attract people that need Title IV funding, and those people aren't necessarily the people I wanted to hire. I wanted to have a much larger scope of individuals that I could hire from so that my hiring pool was larger. That would be one of the reasons to do this, is to take a salon that is willing to put themselves in that position to create that so that their hiring pool is larger. And I know that there's a few salons out there that would do it, and to me, the vast majority won't, because the vast majority of salons are booth rental salons. There isn't going to be a single booth renter out there that really wants to do this for someone else. These are going to be salons that are commission or salary based, larger establishments that already have the ability to do that want to perhaps create a path for people that they know or people that they're close with or in that larger hiring pool. I think if we eliminated the 60 miles, that over time we would attract a different kind of individual into this business. Do I think it's going to be a lot? No, probably not. It'd be a small amount. Do I think it would have an impact on the schools? Probably not, because the vast majority of salons are booth rental and they're not going to do this. There's going to be the people like yourself and myself, so I think there are compelling reasons for both.
Yeah, I agree.
Do I want to take this and change this today? Do I want to bring this up? Because clearly if we make these recommendations, this will all come up during the legislative process. And do I think the subject do I think this is an industry breaker? No, I don't. I do not think that the argument that states that a salon can't do as good of a job as a school is weak, because then we wouldn't have any apprenticeship program whatsoever, because we have rural salons doing this, and that's just a salon in Battle Mountain isn't any different than a salon in Carson City, Reno, or Las Vegas, in my opinion, as far as the level and quality that can be produced. So that's a weak argument. But personally, I'm not inclined to change this today.
Harry, I have someone who'd like to make a statement right now. One of the school
I'd like to
owners.
hear that. Please come forward.
Okay. Perry, this is Gwen from Expertise Cosmetology. I do respect your courage for and being convicted in what you believe in, but I think you would be a great school owner because you have a passion for training and educating, but I disagree with the Title IV funding situation. That's an avenue because we're all taxpayers, and that's where the Title IV funding dollars come from. And we're in the process of opening a salary commission salon, so I wouldn't really want to do my training in my salon. I would prefer to do it in the school, and once they become licensed, there's another avenue. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Perry, just for comment, I've hired 2 young ladies that were on Title IV from schools here in Las Vegas, and they're 2 of my best employees. So
I understand that.
I don't have a problem.
I have those individuals working for me as well, and I have no problems. So I'm not. It's not.
I have someone else that'd like to make a
I'm
statement.
not, it's just what I'm saying is that there's an avenue that provides a broader channel into schools than the avenue from people that don't qualify for Title IV. And I'd like to make sure that that avenue is as broad as possible with as few limitations to entry into this profession as possible. But that
Have
being
one more
said,
statement, please, Perry.
Yes, this is Marianne Rector.
Yes.
I'm representing the Euphoria Aliante campus. And I do have a quick question. I think I wanted some clarification from you. You made a statement that you wanted to hire people from a higher a pool, and you made reference to students receiving Title IV funding. Do you feel that a salon would produce a higher caliber of a student or a higher caliber of a stylist versus coming from a school?
She's misunderstanding.
no.
Can I address that?
Yeah, please.
I think he didn't say higher, he meant broader range of people, because people that are able to take the avenue of receiving funding aren't always the people that are currently working and have jobs. And I think he wanted to reach out to a broader spectrum. It's not a higher level. He didn't state that.
Okay,
He meant a broader
just
level.
that makes more sense, and I appreciate that, because when I first heard that, you said you had made a comment. Just you wanted to, as a salon owner, you wanted to hire from a higher
Higher
pool of people who you could possibly bring into the salon.
Yeah.
I wanted
It's a
to have
misunderstanding.
more choices from a broader employment.
It was a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not higher. It's,
Okay,
yeah,
so
it's what I want to do is have a broader channel into this profession with fewer obstacles for people who are currently employed.
And I want to address something else. It's not all on Perry. You know, Perry and I run the same type of salons. We both run salons where we salary people and employ people by the hour. And so it's not just Perry taking a look at this. After he brought it up at our last board meeting, or at the board meeting where he presented it, I've had people come to me and talk to me about it as well. And it would be me as well that we're addressing here. So it's not, I don't want this to be a dog session on Perry, okay? Perry is very articulate and has researched it and is excellent at training. That's a bonus. I would do well to do as well as he does with that field. I'm just saying that it needs to be taken, we need to take a look at it. Because just because, you know, you understand, you guys have a strong interest in why you're here as well, okay? So that is not being overlooked. However, we all need to look at every perspective. So please don't turn this around and make it some sort of session as to dog on Perry, because I don't appreciate that.
oh no, it's not. It's
not about that.
Not at all.
It's just
It
we're
was.
taking a look at it as perspective.
It was a simple question, because at first we were talking about the 60-mile radius and who, you know, if you can't get to a school. Then at one point it turned into a Title IV funding. For myself, I just was curious.
That's what you were.
Okay, that was all. That was all. It was just, I just wanted, I wasn't quite sure if it was the travel thing or if it was a Title IV funding thing versus a higher caliber of student leaving a salon versus a school.
No, it's missing.
It's not that. It's about creating a broader channel with less obstacles to have a functioning hairdresser who can earn a living doing this. And Jeanette and I are both very concerned about the number of people that come into this profession and do not have an adequate channel from school to a functioning cosmetologist that can earn a living at it. We feel that there's there's something that needs to be done for those students. One of the things that we are looking at is if we provide a channel that comes through the salon for those salons that would be willing to take on that challenge, is whether or not we could get a hairdresser that would come into the profession and stay in the profession for long periods of time. In my particular case, I wanted to have a broader range of people to hire from, which would include non-licensed individuals who could then come through, be trained, and do that type of work, because I have a very strong training program in the salon already. So for me, it was a fair fit. My objection to this particular statute is that there's no difference between a salon in Battle Mountain and a salon in Carson, Reno, or Las Vegas as far as the board is concerned, and how we regulate them, the requirements we have of them, the ability for them to produce a student that can pass a test, all those things. To me, there's zero difference between those two salons, and yet we have a restriction here that tends to exclude salons that are in a location that's within 60 miles of a school. So to me, this is rather exclusive to salons rather than being inclusive. So I know this is a contentious issue.
And I think some valid points were made. You know, there isn't
Correct.
every pros and cons like you stated earlier. So at this point, I think it's something we should just go past.
Okay.
I mean, I think we
Linda, would
executed that.
you
Yes,
like
I'm
to
ready to
go
move
past
on
this
to the
issue?
next thing.
All right, we will not be changing the 60-mile requirement in this
Or maybe we
meeting.
go back to it.
Maybe at some future time, if we feel like arguing it, we will, but not today.
With more research.
Yeah. All right, so that stays the same. Back to the changes to the proposed 2171 esthetician's apprentice to read 1B. The training of a person as an esthetician's apprentice will be conducted at a licensed cosmetological establishment that is located 60 miles or more from a licensed school of cosmetology. 2, the board may, for good cause shown, waive the requirements of subsection 1 for a particular applicant. 3, an applicant for a certificate of registration as an esthetician's apprentice must submit an application to the board on a form prescribed by the board. The application must be accompanied by a fee of $100 and must include A statement signed by the licensed esthetician who will be supervising and training the esthetician's apprentice, which states that the licensed esthetician has been licensed by the board to practice cosmetology in this state for not less than 3 years immediately preceding the date of the application, and that his or her license has been in good standing during that period, semicolon. B, a statement signed by the owner of the cosmetological establishment where the applicant will be trained, which states that the owner will permit the applicant to be trained as an esthetician's apprentice at the cosmetological establishment, and C, such other information as the board may require by regulation. 4, a certificate of registration as an esthetician's apprentice is valid for, this is where we can have some discussion. It says here 2 years for that, and we're looking at changing the esthetician down to, how many hours was that? 1,800 hours. So that's like half the time. So let's cut this in half. Let's make this apprentice is valid for 1 year after the date on which it is issued and may be renewed by the board upon good cause shown. Any discussion on the 1 year change to this section? Is there any public comment on changing the 1 year?
1,800 hours equals, what is an average work year?
2,000 hours.
Oh, is it? Okay, I think that's fair.
They'd be working quite a bit. That's
Full-time.
full time.
I think that's fair. It gives them a leeway of 200 hours.
That's 4 weeks, that's a month. And it does state that they can have it renewed on good cause, and they could say, I got pregnant or I had an injury or something like that, and we wouldn't probably have any issue with that, correct? Okay.
I agree with that.
I agree. Linda, do you agree with 1 year? Is that okay with you?
Yes.
You understand a work year is 2,000 hours, usually.
Okay.
So that gives them 4 weeks leeway.
Maybe 5.
I think I'm all right with that.
Okay. So we'll go with that for the moment. So seeing no strong objections, we'll keep that. Okay. So that would be under esthetician's apprentice, making all the changes, including 1 year under segment 4. Okay, so then we would do 2172. That would be hair designer's apprentice. Application for certificate of registration, waiver fee, expiration, and renewal of certificate of registration. The board may issue a certificate of registration as a hair designer's apprentice to a person if A, the person is required to travel more than 60 miles from his or her place of residence to attend a licensed school of cosmetology, and B, the training of the person as a hair designer's apprentice will be conducted at a licensed cosmetological establishment that is located 60 miles or more from a licensed school of cosmetology. 2, the board may, for good cause shown, waive the requirements of subsection 1 for a particular applicant. 3, an application for a certificate of registration as a hair designer's apprentice must submit an application to the board on a form prescribed by the board. The application must be accompanied by a fee of $100 and must include A statement signed by the licensed hair designer who will be supervising and training the hair designer's apprentice, which states that the licensed hair designer has been licensed by the board to practice cosmetology in this state for not less than 3 years immediately preceding the date of the application, and that his or her license has been in good standing during that period. B, a statement signed by the owner of the licensed cosmetological establishment where the applicant will be trained, which states that the owner will permit the applicant to be trained as a hair designer's apprentice at the cosmetological establishment, and C, such other information as the board may require by regulation. 4, a certificate of registration as a hair designer's apprentice is valid for all right, the hair designer is 1,200 hours.
I'm guessing.
2,400 for the apprentice. Oh, there it is, yes.
So it'd have to be 1.5 years or 2 years. That's a long time, though. 2 years.
2 years is a long time.
Can we put like 16 months?
Because 3,600 hours would be the cosmetologist. So 2,400 hours, we're talking 1,200 hours less. I'm inclined to just cut it in half and do 1.5 years, so we do 18 months. Linda, do you have any comment on that?
No, I don't have
18
any.
months versus, okay. Is there any comment from the
I'm fine with
schools,
cutting
from
the
public?
time.
Okay. Any comment from the public on why that would be not feasible?
Yes, we have some comment in Vegas.
Great, please come forward.
Gwen from Expertise. So what we're saying is going to be like a 20, instead of a 3,600 hour program, it'll be 2,400, how many hours?
That is correct, yes. It is as a hair designer, not a cosmetologist.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I was thinking
Because currently
cosmetology.
it's 1,200 hours for a hair designer in a school, so we double that to 2,400 hours.
Okay.
And now we're trying to figure out the time frame that we're going to license them for.
17 months would take exactly amount, so 18 months gives them an extra 4 weeks.
Okay.
Let's give them, we gave 5 weeks before, 200 hours leeway, so let's give them an additional 200 hours leeway, so let's make it 19 months.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay.
19 months, okay? Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Because we gave them a little extra time, so we give
Yes,
them
we
19
settled on
months.
19.
19 months. That gives them enough time. That gives them about 7 or 8 weeks of leeway time where they can be sick or not show up or whatever it happens to be, but that gives them a bit of leeway. Okay.
And just to be clear, it's rounded up, so
Correct.
It won't be like, well, why is it only this much?
Right.
5 weeks here, 4 weeks here.
Correct. We rounded it up to the nearest month for ease of administration. All right. And so that would then read under 2172, a certificate 2172-4, a certificate of registration as a hair designer's apprentice is valid for 19 months after the date on which it is issued and may be renewed by the board upon good cause shown. Okay, so that was...
Suggestion I would make for consistency.
Yes.
With 19 months, I would convert all timeline licenses in this section to 2 months.
Good.
So that it's consistent. Instead of 1 year, it's 12 months, 24 months, 18 months, 19 months.
Good.
All right, I'm okay with that. So instead of in 2171, we'll go 12 months instead of 1 year. We should probably then, while we're at it, if we're going to do that for consistency's sake, yes. So let's just add that back under 217 plus 24. Okay, so then the next one would be 2173, and that would be nail technician. So that would then read, nail technician's apprentice, application for certificate of registration, waiver, fee, expiration, and renewal of certificate of registration. 1. The board may issue a certificate of registration as a nail technician's apprentice to a person if A. the person is required to travel more than 60 miles from his or her place of residence to attend a licensed school of cosmetology, and B. the training of the person as a nail technician's apprentice will be conducted at a licensed cosmetological establishment that is located 60 miles or more from a licensed school of cosmetology. 2. The board may, for good cause shown, waive the requirements of subsection 1 for a particular applicant. 3. An applicant for a certificate of registration as a nail technician's apprentice must submit an application to the board on a form prescribed by the board. The application must be accompanied by a fee of $100 and must include a statement signed by the licensed nail technician who will be supervising and training the nail technician's apprentice, which states that the licensed nail technician has been licensed by the board to practice cosmetology in this state for not less than 3 years immediately preceding the date of the application, and that his or her license has been in good standing during that period. B. A statement signed by the owner of the licensed cosmetological establishment where the applicant will be trained, which states that the owner will permit the applicant to be trained as a nail technician's apprentice at the cosmetological establishment, and C. Such other information as the board may require by regulation. 4. A certificate of registration as a nail technician's apprentice is valid for how much time?
Half of the hair design, so I would say you want to take it to half and round up, so 10 months.
10 months? 10 months is good with me. So this would read, is there any comment on 10 months? Is there any discussion on 10 months? Being good, bad, or indifferent?
Good with me?
I'm
Seeing
fine with
none, we'll
it.
move forward. Okay. 4. A certificate of registration as a nail technician's apprentice is valid for 10 months after the date on which it is issued and may be renewed by the board upon good cause shown. Okay. Is there any... Those would be the changes necessary required under 217 to make it consistent with allowing apprentices in the esthetician, hair designer, and nail technician field. Now, moving on to 2175. Cosmetologist apprentice, display of certificate of registration, conditions and limitations on employment and training records, statutes, and duties of licensees involved in training and regulations. A cosmetologist apprentice shall display the certificate of registration issued to him in plain view. To receive credit in an apprenticeship, a cosmetologist apprentice must regularly be employed. Okay, so this is pretty extensive. I'd like to make this a little bit, I don't want to do what we just did, because there's nothing in here that changes relative to the actual hours required or relative to the specific field. So, in order to change this,
You have the term licensed cosmetologist appearing in section 2B. You also have it appearing in.
right? But what I want to do is make this a little broader, so that it encompasses all of that. I think I'm going to throw out there that we do what was suggested here, and instead of cosmetologist apprentice, we put cosmetology apprentice. Because that encompasses it. I think we can do that here.
Just have to be careful there. It says licensed.
I understand. We'll have to go through each one of these and make sure that it works that, and that's. So let's start with changing with a proposal that we're going to do this cosmetology apprentice. And then let's go through each one of these and see what we have to do to make that work so that we have this one that works with every apprentice program we're going to implement. All right, so a cosmetology apprentice shall display the certificate of registration issued to him or her by the board in plain view of the public at the position where the cosmetology apprentice is being trained. Now, I want to clarify for myself real quick here. We don't have cosmetology as a definition under the 02XXX. Yes, we do. There it is. Cosmetology defined includes occupations. Okay, I think we can totally do this. All right, so we can totally do this. Okay, so.
Should we put as referred to and then list that?
Not at the moment, no, because it automatically refers to the definition.
Okay.
Right. Okay, so it would read, 1, a cosmetology apprentice shall display the certificate of registration issued to him or her by the board in plain view of the public at the position where the cosmetology apprentice is being trained. The cosmetology apprentice, the licensed cosmetologist supervising and the training of the cosmetology apprentice and the owner of the cosmetological establishment. So under this licensed cosmetologist supervising.
Licensed supervisor? Would that work there?
I think it might.
You could define, two definitions you would have to add. One is you have to define cosmetology apprentice, so that you know specifically it's any apprentice in one of the fields. The other thing you need to define is you could say a licensed cosmetology, licensed cosmetology professional, you could use that term, and it would be anyone licensed as a licensed cosmetologist, nail technician, esthetician, any of the professions within cosmetology. And I think if you define those two terms, you could then use those throughout this section. I think
State your second one again, licensed cosmetology?
licensed cosmetology professional. That would be anyone holding a license from the state board to practice cosmetology, to be a licensed cosmetologist, a licensed nail technologist, a licensed hair designer, or licensed esthetician.
And would you put those in the beginning under cosmetology?
They'd be under definitions section.
Two definitions, the cosmetology
Apprentice.
and then licensed cosmetology professional, or licensed, I guess you have to need some other word to follow.
Yeah, I would rather do as you're suggesting, because if it's too much, they can say, we don't need this, and they scratch it out. To have them go back and make more is probably more work and more effort, and would be a greater obstacle than saying, let's take that out.
If you let LCB make definitions, because they don't understand the profession.
Right.
So, anything we want to have in front of them, we should define, let them make modifications, but don't let them create a whole definition on their own. They would probably ask for our indulgence on what to do, but I'd rather have it defined.
All right, so let's stray from 2175 and go back and let's create those definitions. That should be a pretty simple process, in my opinion.
You have another definition of apprentice, right?
We have cosmetologist apprentice defined, yes.
If you just substitute the word cosmetology instead of cosmetologist, you can use that same definition and just call out the specific.
But on the other hand, we've used the word cosmetologist apprentice in many of the all the different things that we've just changed.
I would leave cosmetologist apprentice. That's different than a cosmetology apprentice.
Okay.
Add a new
and just add a new definition.
Correct. But you can use the similar wording.
Maybe under after this
cosmetology
024, maybe.
Yeah. Let's just, for our particular references, let's call this 644.0241. And then we will call that cosmetology apprentice defined. And then we would use a cosmetology apprentice includes.
I would use the same definition, just add different words so you can.
Yeah, means a person who is engaged in learning the occupation of any of the fields of cosmetology in a cosmetological establishment who is registered with the Board of Practice as a cosmetologist, as a cosmetology apprentice.
I think that's good, and it encompasses if we ever expand in makeup or in however that's going, whatever road we're going on that, but if anything else blows up, that would be.
Okay, so what did I just say? A cosmetology apprentice, means a person who is engaged in learning the occupation of any of all. What did I say, guys? I hate when it.
You don't say all because that's cosmetologist.
Yeah. Right. Of any field of cosmetology. That's what it is. Okay. Learning the occupation of any field of cosmetology. In a cosmetological establishment and who is registered with the board to practice cosmetology as a cosmetology apprentice. Okay, that would be that one. All right, the next one would be cosmetologist Professional?
Licensed cosmetology professional. Is that what, again, would be a licensed nail technician, a licensed cosmetologist, a licensed hair braid designer, a licensed esthetician? Visually, not as, and they don't have to have all those skills or have a license for all of that. They could be any one or all of those licenses.
Don't want to duplicate things like the definition of a professional. Because the word professional means of, relating to, or connected with a profession. So by stating that, I think it's a person engaged or qualified in a profession. I don't think that needs to be redundant because that's a clear English term. So if we state a licensed cosmetologist, cosmetology professional, I think that's clear in the English language.
I'm just deferring to board definition.
I understand, and I'm trying to walk a line between too much and not enough and that kind of stuff.
And we can certainly,
let's
not define that term. If LCD raises a question about what does this mean, if outside of the, it's not, I agree, I think it's clear from the English language what a licensed cosmetology professional is, because we have cosmetology defined.
Right.
Licensed defined.
Right. Everything else is defined.
After we get this all down in writing and scrubbed down, is there somebody that looks at it before it goes before them?
It would, the process would typically be, this would, the finalized language would go to the board would approve with amendments throughout that process. That would then come to staff to bring it through the process. 2 courses of action. It can be done as a BDR, bill draft request, where we go straight to the governor and they take it up. If they don't, then we have to find a bill sponsor, which there are several, either on the Senate or the House side, and then we bring it to them. Either of those is going to go through the LCB process, which is a group of attorneys who looks at every proposed regulation to make sure it's consistent with law, that it's constitutional, all those things. They will scrub through it, and if there's anything that's not defined or not tied together, they'll come back and say, and give us revisions to that.
Right, and we're just trying to make their job easy, so they look at it and go, this is great. I think we need to tweak that, and that's what we're trying to do.
In particular, not so much the law, but the practice. If they will know nothing about the meaning or intent of the practice, they'll just go by the law.
Okay, so I'm going to not define cosmetology professional, and we're going to use that terminology as straight English language that everyone will know. All right, so back to 644.2175, cosmetology apprentice. And a cosmetology apprentice shall display the certificate of registration issued to him or her by the board in plain view of the public at the position where the cosmetology apprentice is being trained. The cosmetology's apprentice, the licensed cosmetology professional supervising and training the cosmetology's apprentice, and the owner of the cosmetological establishment where the cosmetology apprentice is being trained shall not advertise or hold the cosmetology's apprentice out as being a licensed cosmetology professional, or use any title or abbreviation that would indicate that the cosmetology's apprentice is a licensed cosmetology professional. You will have that and can repeat that and send that back to me in writing, correct? So I don't have to write this down. Okay, thank you very much. All right. 2, to receive credit for an apprenticeship, a cosmetology apprentice or cosmetology's apprentice must be regularly employed during his or her training by A, the cosmetological establishment where the cosmetology apprentice is being trained, or B, if the cosmetology apprentice is being supervised and trained by a licensed cosmetology professional who is leasing space in a cosmetological establishment, the licensed cosmetologist. Who's leasing space? The licensed cosmetology professional. Correct? All right. 3. Not more than one cosmetology apprentice may be employed at any time at a licensed cosmetological establishment. So I want to bring this up a little bit, just talk about it so that it's talked about, not necessarily because it's an issue for me. This would preclude, because this is written for a cosmetologist apprentice, we're talking a larger salon might have a cosmetologist, they might have a hair designer, they might have a nail technician, and if it so suited them, why would they not be able to have multiple things going on? I guess that's because that it gives the impression of being a school. Is the way I see that, because if you have more than one person in a salon who's a student or apprentice, you now have multiple people, thus the appearance of a school.
I don't know what the intent of that was.
Yeah, I'm just sort of rationalizing this to see whether or not we want to make changes or not to this. Being that we're talking about establishments in rural areas, probably this is not an issue. So let's move on. Unless somebody else wants to. Linda, anything?
No, I have no comment. I prefer to leave it the way it is.
Okay, so we leave it the way it is. Not more than one cosmetology's apprentice may be employed at any time at a licensed cosmetological establishment. 4, a licensed cosmetology professional who is supervising and training a cosmetology apprentice shall A, supervise all work done by the cosmetology apprentice, and B, be in attendance at all times that the cosmetology apprentice is engaged in the practice of cosmetology. 5, a licensed cosmetology professional who is supervising and training a cosmetology apprentice shall keep a daily record of the training that is provided to the cosmetology apprentice. The licensed cosmetology professional shall A, keep the daily records at the cosmetological establishment where the cosmetology apprentice is being trained, and upon the request of the board, make the daily records available to the board, and B, submit a copy of the records to the board at such regular intervals as the board may require for regulation. 6, for the purposes of this chapter, a licensed cosmetology professional is not required to obtain a license from the board as an instructor to train a cosmetology apprentice pursuant to this section and NRS 644.217, and the licensed cosmetology professional is not subject to regulation as an instructor because he or she provides such training. B, a licensed cosmetological establishment which employs a cosmetology apprentice or at which a cosmetology apprentice is being trained is not subject to regulation as a school of cosmetology because the cosmetology apprentice is being trained at the cosmetological establishment. 7, the board may adopt A, regulations relating to the qualifications of a licensed cosmetology professional to supervise and train a cosmetology apprentice. B, regulations relating to the procedures and subject matter that must be included in the training of a cosmetology apprentice. C, regulations relating to the training of a cosmetology apprentice to verify the number of hours of training received by the cosmetology apprentice, and D, such other regulations as the board determines necessary to carry out the provisions of this section and NRS 644.217.
The only thing I would say, in each place where it says 217, you'd have to include 2171, 2172, and 2173.
Yes.
Those are the three
Those
subsections.
are the three subsections. So yes, so that would be, you could include that in my statement. Thank you. Okay, any other discussion relative to the proposed 644-2175?
No, I do not have
Changes.
any.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Next one I have on my list is 644.408. A, amount of instruction required before a student commences work on public. A student must receive the following minimum amount of instruction in the classroom before commencing work on members of the public. A student enrolled as a cosmetologist, a student enrolled in, why did I put that in here?
Number 4.
Oh, a student enrolled as an electrologist apprentice must receive at least 150 hours. So they were defining the apprentice.
Currently, there's no regulation on a cosmetologist apprentice for when they can start performing work.
That is correct, and I think we should leave it at that. So I would say let's just leave 408 the way it is, because otherwise we have to create other rules for everything, and it's hard to enforce that too. Yeah. So 408, leave it as is. Any discussion on that?
So you're saying you want to
Seeing
leave this the same?
Correct. No changes to 644.408.
Okay. Just, I have one comment.
Yes?
Good morning. My name is Willa Cheney. I'm one of the starters of the Expertise School of Beauty. But I have a question. Are you saying that a person can be a cosmetologist and not have X amount of hours before they're allowed to work on a customer? So they can come in at 200 hours, 100 hours, or 50 hours, and they can start working on John Q. Public? I'm not understanding.
Yes, that's apparently what the law says at this moment in time.
Okay, so
that's not something we're changing or proposing.
It's only as an apprentice.
And it's only as an apprentice in a rural area.
It doesn't matter if the rural area or suburbia. It's people are people, and I think before any person is allowed to work on a person, they should have the acquired experience. Wouldn't you think?
Well, my own personal opinion, I believe that the person in charge should be is held accountable, and if that person in charge believes that that apprentice could do a shampoo safely on a client, that the person in charge is the one that is being held accountable for it. And I'm okay with that.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Because in an environment where you've had your training, you're overseen, and it's similar to a school, and I would say if I was 60 miles out and we had a discussion and I had hired somebody of good moral character, and I felt that they were not going to damage my client by giving them a shampoo, I would take the hit for that if something went wrong. Well, as a professional,
I would disagree, because just because you think that they might have the necessary skills to do that job, it doesn't mean that they know how. Because in a beauty school, they have to be taught certain kinds of manipulation, certain kind of products they need to use on the hair. So to me, it's quite ludicrous to think that a person who has only 50 hours could come in and do a shampoo or even to do consultation on the hair. So I think maybe you should look at that again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Perry,
Any other comments on that?
Perry, I have a question. We're on
Yes,
644408, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so you're still leaving the cosmetologist, let's just leave 300 hours before they can work, and hair
Yes.
designer 300, nail technologist 100?
Correct.
Right.
Okay, an electrologist at least 150 hours.
Right.
Okay, and
The reason
esthetician
this
150. So you're leaving all
Correct.
that the same, you just want to add on the apprentice?
I don't want to add anything.
Okay, so where is this coming in about an apprentice having 50 hours?
Well, currently, if you're an apprentice in there are no requirements for minimum hours of instruction prior to working on a client. That is not addressed in any of the NRSs or NACs that we currently are enforcing. So if we change that, we have to address all of the apprenticeship programs in the exact number of hours, and then we have to figure out a way to make sure that we enforce that as well. And being that we inspect the salons that are in our further regions fewer times than we do in our more metropolitan areas, I think that it would be very difficult to enforce for us. And secondarily, I believe that the cosmetology professional who has taken on an apprentice, they should be the one held accountable and not the cosmetology apprentice. So I'm good with leaving this as is and not defining that, because I think the public is well served by the integrity of any person who wishes to take on a cosmetology apprentice in the first place. So, any other comments?
No. I just want to be sure that everything is, the way it should be. So
I do too.
I'm not sure that the apprentice should not be listed. I mean, because you're expecting that apprentice to do the same thing. Why would they not do the same amount of hours that they would do in a school?
They're doing twice the number of hours.
Okay, well, twice
Yeah,
the
they're doing
amount of
twice
hours.
the number of total hours. Right. The difference, in my opinion, is that you have a one-on-one scenario here. This is one apprentice to one cosmetology professional. And that one-on-one relationship, I think, is stronger and makes a stronger case for it than does the school scenario where it's not one-on-one.
I have another comment from a school.
Hi, my name is Jackie
Yes.
Halley. I am the school director for Marinello Schools of Beauty here in Las Vegas. And I just wanted to kind of add to the fact that if we require all people, I'm just saying, if we have a start of 5 students in a school, and we require that in freshmen that they maintain, based on state boards requirements, a specific number of hours before they're able to work on the general public, my concern is that if apprentices are allowed to immediately go in and start working on guests or clients in the salon, that you certainly open up a Pandora's box for now. We've got students here that know, let's say the girlfriend goes to school in wherever, Timbuktu, and she's able to go in with no basic training, no understanding of laws and rules and sanitation and safety and all the things that we require students in the schools to do, why would we want to compromise that? I mean, I would certainly expect that that would be grandfathered in, even, I mean, considering they still have to put in 25 or 2,400 hours or 1,800 hours as opposed to what the students are getting here at the school level. So my concern would be, you know, whether the apprentice program, whether it's 60 miles out or it's next door, that we still hold that particular cosmetologist or hair designer accountable to the same number of hours before they're able to work on general public. And then who mandates that? I mean, I realize that a state board has a lot of responsibilities in ensuring that the salons and the schools are abiding by the Nevada statutes and laws. At the end of the day, 60 miles out, I know that what you're saying is it's one-on-one, but there has to be some sort of accountability. And quite frankly, if I'm the cosmetologist that's responsible for an apprentice, I'm certainly not going to sign on to let them go and work on the general public. I think that somebody has to be accountable for that.
I think you should have a
Thank
certain
you.
amount of hours for an apprentice, for the simple fact that, oh Lord, I lost my train of thought.
Understanding that's already a
Oh.
It's okay. Could I address this
Go
for just
ahead.
one moment before I take any other comments? Under the last regulation that we just had, which was 2175, specifically it states that under subsection 6A and B that a licensed cosmetology professional is not required to obtain a license, and B, a licensed cosmetological establishment which employs a cosmetology apprentice or at which a cosmetology apprentice is being trained is not subject to regulation as a school of cosmetology because the cosmetology apprentice is being trained at the cosmetological establishment. If we start requiring the same type of requirements that is required in a school of cosmetology, we would have to change that particular section, and we would have to redefine that and have sufficient cause to really make a cosmetological establishment similar to a school when they're having an apprentice. And I don't think that's necessary for the number of people that are involved in this program and or the ability for us to administrate it effectively.
Perry, I
Now
don't
I'll
think
take
it
any
would-
other comments.
I don't think it would be a problem as far as the inspectors go out, what, twice a year? Is it twice a year to the rural areas?
Correct.
So they could check at that time, they could check the hours, and they can check all of this, which I am assuming they're doing at this time. Yes, according to Gloria, they are.
They have to keep
So,
a record of that.
I would think it would be, have them a certain amount of hours, and then they would be marked, and we would be able to know whether or not they were receiving them or not. We would know as much as we would possibly know from the records. I mean, anything can be changed.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you, Linda. The other thing that is required here is that it says, let me see here, that basically when you get a cosmetology apprentice, you're hiring them. It says here, a licensed cosmetological establishment which employs a cosmetology apprentice or at which a cosmetology apprentice is being trained. If I was an employer, I would, and I'm employing a cosmetology apprentice, one of the reasons I would even do that in the first place was to have someone to help me with the operations inside in the salon, and to put an unnecessary restriction on that might dissuade that from happening. So I think the legislature did a good job the way it is, and I'll take any suggestions and we can discuss them and add them to it.
I have another comment
Yes.
by
Please come forward.
Okay, Gwen from Expertise. I just want to share one thing, because I'm here in support of the apprenticeship program. There's some pros and some cons, like you said earlier, and I would like to see us to be able to work together as the schools and the board, not having to, have to battle this out, pretty much. I think what we need to do with probably not having the requirements is to do a little bit more research. I think that some of the reasons the apprenticeship program did not work in the past.
Exactly.
I mean, there was a lot of problems. I sat in on a workshop in California a couple years ago, and they were talking about or thinking about doing away with that apprenticeship program. It's just all over the place. So in order for us to have success with this apprenticeship program, because I'm sure that there are in some areas cosmetologists that's capable of training and doing a good job of it. But I think we need to set some requirements in place, even if it's 50 hours before, then my apprentice could maybe possibly apply a relaxer. If I'm a cosmetologist of 19, well, 30 years really. I stood behind the chair for 19. And if I'm really busy and I have an apprentice that I know that's been practicing it here at home for years, and I feel that she could apply this chemical properly, and I give her that, I walk away, we get to the shampoo bowl, the hair is going down the drain because she doesn't know the strength, the different type of relaxers, the strength, type of shampoos. I just think we need to put some type of requirements, because if we don't, I don't think it's going to be a successful program, because I don't think it's that successful right now. So I just have some concerns about allowing someone, because I trust them, because I want to hire them, because they're a great cutter or a great stylist. They might not be good. They don't know sanitation. They don't know chemicals. They don't know hair analysis. It's just so much they don't know that they should, even if it's minimal hours, a lot less than the school, they should have some type of additional training before they're able to service clients. That's my belief.
Thank you.
Okay.
Gloria?
Yes, I agree with Gwen. I think we should take a look at why we
Could you please speak up or turn on the mic or something? There we go.
I think we should take a look as to why we stopped having the apprentice program to begin with. We should take a look at what happened, what caused us to stop having it here in the state of Nevada, because there were some problems. We were having people use just maybe their sister come in because the salon is busy and shampoo and apply relaxers or do perms, and they had no training at all. So I think if we would just take a look as to why we stopped it to begin with, we could come up with a better program for apprentice. That's just...
Thank you, Gloria.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a comment here.
I'd like to
Person representing,
Just a moment.
any person representing Palm Beach School right now. I believe that it is on the cosmetology supervisor supervising the professional, supervising the person, that it should rely on them, because as a professional, you would want to teach somebody how to properly shampoo and how to properly apply color, apply this before you would even allow it to be on a public member. I, as a licensed cosmetologist, would do that to any apprentice, and I would expect any professional to do that in the same requirements that I would make.
Thank you. Yes, any other comments in Las Vegas?
Perry, would it be possible to, as Gloria said, research this and then bring this back at another meeting?
Oh, anything's possible. I wasn't inclined to discuss the merit of the apprenticeship program. That wasn't the intention of this item on the agenda. The intention of this is to take the existing apprenticeship program, which has been approved by all the powers that be, and clarify it so that it incorporates the various practices that we allow, so that everyone has the opportunity to practice the segment of cosmetology that they wish, using whatever path they wish to get into this profession. So at this point in time, Linda, I would say that I would be willing to discuss that at a future meeting, the validity of having an apprenticeship program, but not happening today.
Okay, so it'd be a good idea to table it and then bring it forth at another board meeting, regular board meeting?
No, that would be a whole no, that would be this committee would have to do that. But it would be a very different agenda item to discuss the validity of all of these statutes that we're going over and revising to make them and clarify them for the purposes that we have, because since this has been done, I'm assuming that's when we added the hair designer and the nail technician and the esthetician. We've broken them out as possible licensing options for people instead of lumping them all as cosmetologists. And all we're doing is just following in that and clarifying that for the law to be applicable to everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Comment?
Jeanette?
I don't think we could go forward with 408 though if we aren't, well, at least compelled to look at the research, because we're just going to move forward and then we'll have to go back later and then readdress it. So do we skip this number?
Well, that's the intention at this moment in time, is not to make any recommendations for changing at this time. We can always come back at a future meeting and revisit this particular NRS at any time. Right?
Okay, because this would have to be changed to move forward with any kind of changes, but because we're going to present the bill draft request at one time with a lump sum of all these different laws, I wouldn't want to go back and then redo another bill draft request.
You would think, though, that at any given time when the cosmetology apprenticeship program was being written into the law, that somebody looked at this and chose not to put cosmetology apprentice in here. They put it everywhere else, but in the past, nobody saw fit to put it in here. So I'm going with what I think they did in the past. If you have a suggestion and you want me to make a recommendation that we put that in there, and know the hours and so on and so forth, I suggest we put that on another agenda item at a different meeting, because I think that will take more time than we have allocated today.
Yes, I would like to do that.
Okay, all right, so let's table the discussion on 644.408 specifically to another meeting, and I will add it to the next committee meeting.
Well, with that, can we have the girls research some of the information, so when we discuss it, we'll be more informed,
yes.
Such as how many apprenticeship programs have we had in the past for, let's say, the last 30 years? I know Gloria probably knows that information.
I would really want to keep it very specific as to the amount of hours we want them to provide in a salon before they are commencing work on members of the public.
Okay.
If we're going to do that, it's not a discussion about the apprenticeship program. It's about how many hours will we require a cosmetology professional to provide to the cosmetology apprentice prior to allowing that person to work on members of the public. I want to keep it very focused on that.
One thing, Gary Landry, Executive Director, one thing that I can do, I can push this question out to NIC and ask all the other executive directors what are their requirements in their state. So at least we get we can get a pulse on what's the profession doing.
That would be good information to have. I would like to have that information, but I want to be very clear that when we revisit this, that it's
the hours.
It's the hours, and it's not a discussion about whether or not we should be doing this or not doing this or anything like that. I want to keep it very focused on that. Was that okay with you, Linda?
Yes, excuse me, Perry, we have one more gentleman like to speak.
Yes,
Hi,
please.
My name is Mark, and I represent Euphoria Institute in Henderson. And I'd just like to comment that if the requirement for an apprenticeship program is 3,600 hours, That to me speaks to the amount of time that's required for a one-on-one, so to speak, experience to take place. It should dictate the amount of hours that is required of an apprentice to start working on the public. If the program itself is twice the time of what it is in a regular school, to me, it should, stand to reason that it should just be doubled the amount of time that a student or an apprentice should take before they work on the public. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we will table 644.408 and the discussion on it to a future meeting based on the research that our staff will do for us. And when they have the research done for us, I'll then schedule it for a meeting following that.
Can it need to be clear for research?
No, just till they feel they have enough, and then we'll do our own research on it. So, okay, so that being said, I think I need a motion on that particular item. It's because that's like a separate thing. So can I get a motion to do that?
I make a motion that we table 644-408 and bring it back at our next meeting for discussion.
Can you say,
And I'll second.
okay? Can we amend that just because we had a little?
Could you amend that to just say future meeting? Because I just want to make sure, as
right,
to make sure we have time to research, and then we're done with it. Then schedule so a future meeting might be a bit more appropriate than the next.
Yes. Could you make that amend? Could you amend your motion to include a future meeting and not next meeting, just in case staff doesn't get their research done?
Okay, I amend my motion to be just what you said.
Future.
Okay.
And I'll second with the amendment included.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So carried.
How can we
Okay.
have a vote when we don't have a quorum?
Because we're a committee, we're a committee of the board. We are not the board.
Okay, thank you.
So
Any actions taken today are not official board actions, they're committee actions, that if you wish to bring them to the board, you can, but the board with a quorum will decide the final fate of anything that's spoken about here.
correct. And this is just for us at the moment. Okay, so we have one more on my list, 644.430. Grounds authorized disciplinary action, orders imposing discipline deemed public records. Okay, so here it says, under 1A, the following are grounds for disciplinary action by the board. A, failure of an owner of an establishment for hair braiding, a cosmetological establishment, a licensed esthetician, cosmetologist, hair designer, hair braider, electrologist, instructor, nail technologist, demonstrator of cosmetics, or school of cosmetology, or cosmetologist's apprentice to comply with the requirements of this chapter or other applicable regulations adopted by the board. I think if we put our term of cosmetology apprentice in place of cosmetologist apprentice, I think that would cover it. Any discussion on that?
That's good.
Okay. Obtaining. Okay. Let's see if we need to do anything else. I don't see anything else that needs addressing. So we'll propose cosmetology apprentice in place of cosmetologist apprentice under section 1A as the only change to 644.430.
I have no comments on that. On
Okay.
644-430.
Okay. Okay, so that about covers all of the regulations and statutes related to cosmetology apprentice that I could find. Is there anybody that knows of any other regulations related to cosmetology apprentice that would need to be altered to create this?
I didn't find any.
What this is the intention of this? No, I don't know.
I've done a search, and the term cosmetology apprentice or apprentice only appears in those sections that you so noted and discussed today.
Okay. All right. So then I would like to take this as a lump sum and suggest that we have a motion that we will carry forward. Actually, what I want to do is I want to get a copy of everything I said and changes I made and look at it in writing. And then at the next meeting, I'll look that over and say that these are the changes that we will be approving, and then we will all have a copy sitting in front of us in writing of everything that we've done.
What I'll do for staff, we can take what you've done in writing, we'll highlight those sections that show changes.
Right.
So that you can look through and be, like yellow highlighted all throughout, so you know the specific wording and changes that were done.
Right.
So that you can.
That would be good, and then we could approve that. So what I would like to do is just merely direct you to do that. Perfect. Okay. Is there anything else I have to do on item 4? I don't think there is. I think we're done with item 4. Would anybody like to take a short bathroom break or anything like that?
Yes, please.
The rest of them should. Yes, please?
Yes, please.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute. Okay, 5-minute recess.
That's
Yes, I am.
Okay, 5 minutes are up. We'll call this meeting back to order. Time is now 11:44. All right, so item number 5, review and possibly formulate revisions for submission to the 2015 legislature to NRS 644130, record of licenses, disclosure of information, and NRS 644.300, notice to Secretary of change of location. The requirements of these laws are not practical and difficult to enforce given the number of licensees and the transient nature of these individuals. These statutes may need to be revised to reflect the current environment of the profession. All right, so let's read 644130. All right. The board shall keep a record containing the name, known place of business, and the date and number of the license of every nail technologist, electrologist, esthetician, hair designer, hair braider, demonstrator of cosmetics, and cosmetologist, together with the names and addresses of all establishments for hair braiding, cosmetology, logical establishments, and the schools of cosmetology licensed pursuant to this chapter. The record must also contain the facts which the applicants claimed in their application to justify their licensure. 2, the board may disclose the information contained in the record kept pursuant to subsection 1 to any other licensing board or agency that is investigating a licensee. B, a member of the general public exempt information concerning the home, work address, and telephone number of the licensee. Okay. So what we have is a lot of information that tends to be transient. In particular, the known place of business and the date and number of the license of every nail technologist. I think it's so difficult and unimportant to require the known place of business, being that we have so many people who are self-employed in this industry and are transient. And if we are trying to get in touch with that licensee, having the information that's on that we have for them, their personal mailing address and their phone number and so on and so forth, is far more important than the known place of business. So when I was looking this over, I thought of eliminating known place of business from this statute. Because it places a little bit less of a burden, I think. Now, the comment I have from staff says that we do not currently record these changes of location and have not been requiring or enforcing said notification by licensees. Given the number of licensees in the state and the sometimes transient nature of the business, this statute adds a huge burden on staff if they were to try to maintain records of every licensee's work location. And my additional comments was that the secretary doesn't actually get this notice, it's our staff. And it should be changed to reflect that. Okay.
I have a comment.
Yes.
Does I have a comment?
Why not? Because I'm at a pause.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. So I have a checks and balances issue with that. So if people are just licensed and feel free to run around and work at, you know, Perry's Hair Studio and Bella and Liaison, how are we, and then maybe they're going to work in their kitchen. I don't know. It's just a little bit of a loosey-goosey, and lack of a better term for me.
And in your mind, what is the purpose of knowing their known place of business?
I'm just thinking as an accountability for the licensed cosmetologist or licensed professional, that they have an accountability that they're working in a licensed cosmetological establishment.
It doesn't change that. This doesn't say that they can work anywhere else. It just says that we don't have to record where they're working.
Okay. As long as it's stated in there, it's a licensed cosmetologist.
Yeah, it's
cosmetological. What a word.
It's called the board shall keep a record containing the name, and we're only trying to take the record and eliminate the known place of business from our record because of the large transient. Basically, what it means is that it would take a staff member easily, in my opinion, 2 to 3 minutes per licensee per time they changed, every time we did that. Or we would have to create a technological thing that when they get their licensing, when we do a license inspection, that at that moment in time, it cross-references and adds an address to that thing. And both of those things can be pretty expensive to implement.
One thing that I would say is, in its current form, where we have to do these things manually, I agree wholeheartedly. It is an undue administrative burden on us. In the future, that may be something you want to write into the statute. When we have the ability to have license renewals online, as we're waiting to see if the Senate bill gets signed by the governor, there are bills now that are requiring all agencies to allow online renewals doing everything that you do offline, online, or in 2 years go explain to the legislature why you can't, or you're able to do that. There's a bill now that, I can't remember the bill number, but there's a bill waiting for signature. If that goes through, we're going to be required to do that. So when we get to the point of having people taking it upon themselves and requiring them to keep up with current mailing address or primary place of business, because no place of business is open-ended in a time when people worked in one salon. The rule or the norm is starting to be multiple salons, and so even when you say no place of business, it's not pluralized, so that if we're going to do anything, at least clear that up. It's the primary place of business where they spend most of their time. But I think as we have online registration, online access for the licensees, the responsibility really needs to be on the licensee to keep current with how we contact them. And so I don't have an opinion one way or the other on known place of business. I do think name, address, telephone number has to be current. We have to maintain that now just for legal contact reasons. But my proposal as we go online is to shift that burden to the licensee. If they're required, if they don't receive notices, it's not the board who has to keep up with that. It's some self-responsibility of the licensee.
And you bring up a good point. So in our current situation, we already have complaints from licensees that they didn't get notified.
Right.
And that the excuses that they have at this point. So what are we going to do if we're not requiring any accountability, but yet they're going to claim that it's our responsibility as a board to notify them and keep them, informed. However, they have no accountability.
They need to keep up their current contact, but we don't contact them through the known place of business. We actually send them to their address on record, which is their personal address. We won't necessarily send it to the salon, any notices and all that. You go personally to them. There may be, I haven't checked through all the statutes to see how many places it affects by doing that, but that's one of the things that you can do. I have no problem at all with this known place of business, because it is a misnomer to say that there's a specific business that you work at. When you're renting chairs in multiple salons, you're working in multiple different salons, it's a lot more difficult, and certainly an administrative burden. Without proper technology, a big administrative burden on staff.
Linda, do you have any comments?
No, I don't have any comments on it.
I am inclined to replace known place of business with primary contact information.
So let's read it as that, at least the first sentence.
The board shall keep a record containing the name, primary contact information, and the date and number of the license of every nail technologist, etc., etc.
I think that works for me.
Because it includes us in the future collecting email addresses, whatever they want to give us as a way to contact them. If that primary contact information changes, we should be required to make that those changes in our records. That I agree with. But just known place of business is not enough.
Well, if you're doing that, so you're going to ask them for their email addresses and so forth, or is that something we're going to? No. Excuse me, Gloria has a statement.
I have a question.
Yeah, Linda, Gloria, I'll get to you in just one moment, okay? Linda, I'd like you to complete your train of thought first, please.
Okay, so are we going to be asking them for email information and so forth? Are you talking about as
I envision it, not at the moment, but for allowing for future expansion in technology and so forth.
Well, generally, yes, if someone's written up for something by the inspectors, let us say, and then they can give us their current address and we know where they work. So is the office saying that it's too much trouble to go into and then change that? Because that was my assumption, is say I'm in the Orleans hotel where I am now, and I move over to the Golden Nugget, that I may not know to do it at that moment, but if I came in and inspected, then they would know I was at the Golden Nugget, and I would thought that went into the records. So, Gloria?
Yes, I was thinking, we just had a law that was passed that licensees want to work in different locations and have more than one license. They want a duplicate license. And one of the requirements in that law was that we have to know where they are working. It has to be put on that duplicate license. So with that in mind, I think we would, need to know the location of where they're working. And then we also have a law that says when other agencies like law enforcement ask us questions as to where a licensee is, this is done through our attorney, but sometimes we have to give that information as to where they're working, their home address and phone number and all of that. It could be for a legal or criminal reason that we have to have that information.
My question would be, why is it our responsibility for these people to tell us why don't they tell us where they're working?
Well, that's what we're discussing, correct? How much staff time are we willing to pay for to maintain these records? Because if we don't do this, according to this, we're in non-compliance to statute. And it amounts to a dollar amount for us. We would have to hire a person probably to do this. For the number of licensees that we have, this would probably be a pretty close to full-time job.
So if we changed it to contact information, would that satisfy Gloria?
Well,
If it
when
said
they
contact information?
Primary contact information, 'cause
When
that's
they
what we
submit
wanted.
their application for renewal, their location of work is on that application and it's entered into the Versa system. So if they change their location, it's only a matter of minutes to go in and change it because we do have Versa now. When we was doing it manually, yes, it probably took a lot more time. But it's not that, it doesn't take that much to go in and change their location. If they report it to us, they don't always do that, but and more than likely. And for us, when we're sending out renewal notices or any kind of documentation to the licensees, when we don't have updated addresses for their home or salon, we get a ton of that mail returned back to us. And that causes a problem for us, having a lot of returned mail because they are not updating their information.
But the return mail is not because of where they're working. It's their home.
Well, some people list only their salon of where they work, especially if they're owner, and we send it out to them. And if they've moved or closed that salon, we don't know.
As I'm reading this a little bit more slowly, it says it shall keep a record containing the name, known place of business. It doesn't say it has to be current. It just says you have to have a space on your form for the known place of business.
And we do.
As I read that at this slower pace that I'm reading it at now.
Right. And that is on our form.
And being that it's known place of business, it doesn't mean that we know that it's this salon at this moment in time, and if it changes, okay, it's an unknown place of business at that moment in time. But when we do have a known place of business, or when we can in the future request that they keep that updated or something like that. But as I'm reading this, I'm not really so sure that we're mandated to ensure that our records are current on this.
So if an attorney addressed that as, let's say, Ronnie wanted to update his license, and he had moved, and he's no longer at the beauty school, and he comes to the board and says, well, you guys never told me, you never notified me, and yet the attorney says, we shall keep a record.
Yeah, the difference is that his license will have his primary contact information on it. His application for his license, where he wants to be contacted, would be on that application.
So where is that now? Is that stated somewhere, or that's just known?
That's somewhere else issue. Limitation on information that became.
Well, as long as this one can't come back and we stand accused.
My suggestion would be to add language, because we're talking 2 years hence, we will definitely have a system for people to log in and update their information.
Right.
2 years, that would be definite. So I wouldn't mind having added to 130 some language that is the responsibility of the licensee to make updates to the board's website for keeping track, for us to keep track of their.
I think that's a great suggestion, because at this point it stands that we're completely responsible, which makes them unaccountable. See, because it's the board shall. So what if we?
Since you'll have a record containing their known place of business, but it doesn't say it's current, nor does it say anything else other than that we're responsible for that. I don't read that in there. It just shows me that on our form we have to have a line that says, where do you work?
I understand that, but I think an attorney could argue just the opposite case and say that we shall keep a record, and they might focus in on that. So I think if the attorney could focus on, and I'm no attorney, so I would think that if we could add to that, that it would be the responsibility of the licensee to notify within a certain period of time if they've made within that 2-year range.
Yeah, I'm reluctant to do that because it places another regulation on a licensee that they could be fined for, or that they, and I don't think that they should be penalized for that. I just don't think that that's doable. Yes, Linda?
Excuse me. On 644-300, it states right there, yes, every licensed nail technologist, electrologist, esthetician, hair designer, hair braider, and demonstrator of cosmetics or cosmetological shall within 30 days after changing his or her place of business as designated in the records of the board. Then it goes on to say it's about notify the secretary, blah, 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 which I would delete, but it states right there they have within 30 days to report that.
That is correct, okay.
So what if we just add it's pursuant to NRS 604-300?
No, you know, I'm just inclined to leave it alone. Except maybe say no primary. Add the word primary in there as known primary place of business.
If they're going to have,
I'm not sure about
So
this.
we've got two sides of the coin. They need to be combined in some way, or maybe they don't, and we just use it for argument's sake. We could say, well, it's actually their responsibility based on 644.
It is their responsibility. It's our responsibility to have a place for them to put that in.
Well, should it say availability instead of shall?
No.
Shall keep?
No, the legislature doesn't like that. They like the word shall.
Harry,
Yes,
excuse
Linda.
me, if we're going to issue duplicate license, if that becomes a possibility for people that are working in more than one salon, I think we need to have records of where they're working.
Okay.
I mean, I know it's their responsibility to tell us, but I think it's our responsibility to know, because we issued the license.
So the way I read this is we should have more than one line for place of business. We should have 2 lines or options to add lines to it. And it should say known places of businesses or known places of business. So that we pluralize it to allow for multiple locations.
Well,
and then, because over here it still says that they still have to notify us. Every license changing his or her. Now this would have to probably be changed after changing his or her place of business. Yeah, that would be okay, because then they would say, I work at 2 places, and then they change one place, and 300 still applies to that. So I think it's actually okay if we just pluralize known place of business to known places of business. Or business, yeah. Yeah, because it's a business in multiple places. So it would be known places of business. Just add an S to place. Because nowhere in here to me does this show that it has to be, that it's our responsibility to get that from them, except under 300 where it's their responsibility to make sure we're told. This in turn says that once we're told, we are required to record that information, and I think that that's justifiably right.
I do an additional, I still think it should be cross-referenced, but that's just my opinion, so I'll leave it alone.
Say that again, Jeanette, I didn't hear that.
I just think it should be cross-referenced, because then it makes it clear that we'll keep a record of it, but they need to turn it in. It's their responsibility that we have it.
Yes, I agree with that.
It evens out the playing field, I think, a little bit for the people that are running around doing hair and then they're not notified and come back to us. And I don't know, Gloria, have we had that problem?
Yes, we have had that problem. And I agree. We need to know where they're working in, particularly because we're going to be issuing duplicate license for them to work in different locations. And one of the requirements of that bill is that we have to have the location on the license, so we would need to know.
And just to give an update on where that is, SB 287 was signed by the governor last week. It goes into effect July 1st, so as of July 1st, the board and staff will be ready to issue duplicate licenses. They must be ready to issue duplicate licenses as of July 1st.
Good. I have no problem with the duplicate license.
Okay, so in cross-reference,
So leaving it with a plural like you suggested, I think is a great idea. But then, is that the right word? I don't know, verbiage?
Well, I don't know that we have to reference one regulation or one law in another law, because all laws have the same level of enforceability. And
typically, you don't have cross-reference because
right.
If you make changes, you have to make changes to the cross-reference. It's typically, if you look at the rest of this,
yeah,
reference in the other section,
they don't.
Unless there's a specific, they're like we saw in NRS.
Yeah.
So you think we're covered because it is listed?
Right.
Okay, well then.
Okay. All right, so can I have, let's just recommend adding an S under 644. Where am I here? 644130. We're going to add S to place, to pluralize place, to conform with the current law that we that's just got signed.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I think that's made clear now. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah. And then okay, so item 5. Oh, here it is. So let's just take a look at 644-300 real quick. Since I mentioned it in the agenda, to see if there's anything there that
I think that
you
could
know
be
what's you know what's not in here? The apprentices aren't in here.
What, on 644-300?
Correct.
You could use the cosmetology.
Apprentice. Let's do that. Let's add into 644-300 the cosmetology apprentice following the last, let's see, demonstrator or cosmetologist. No. Yeah, or where it says of cosmetologist, let's see. Let's put it in right after hair braider, right in front of demonstrator of cosmetics. We'll put cosmetology apprentice, comma, demonstrator of cosmetics or cosmetologist shall within 30 days, blah, 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 blah. That would, because that would be consistent with everything else we've done so far today. Any other discussion on that?
I would like to cancel the very last part, to notify the secretary of the board of the new, of the new place of
yes.
business.
Yeah, see that, God, you know, I did write that down, didn't I? Okay, thank you very much, Linda. You're right, notify the secretary we wanted to make that so that it's staff.
You can say no.
Because first of all, if I thought I had to find out who the
Right.
secretary was, I wouldn't know where to look. So I think it'd
Correct.
be easier just notify the staff of the board office, that they know.
So,
Instead of saying secretary, because it appears 3 different places. Every place where secretary is, it really should be board. So in the very first one, the 300, notice to the board of changes of location.
yes,
Right.
Then we can define how that notice occurs in NAC.
Okay.
So that they have to notify us. Then in NAC, we can say notification is through our website or through written or through email. And we can define that.
I think that's good. I think that's good. Okay, do I need to read that out as it should be, or will you make those changes?
I can make the change. I've got it noted on here. Every place where there's secretary, it would be the board.
Correct. Linda, you okay with that?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Any other discussion on 644-300? Any other discussion on 644-130?
No, I don't have any.
Okay, great, moving on. Item number 6, review and possibly formulate revisions for the submission to the 2015 legislature to NRS 644.095, approval of device used in cosmetology. This statute may be antiquated and in need of revision or elimination. So, let's look up 6095. So, question of the staff. Do we have this list?
This is not been done. What staff would like, rather than elimination, is to flip it the other way around and say to give the board the discretion to ban a particular device, like refurb blades and anything that comes up that we shouldn't allow. Make it so that you can selectively ban a particular device if it proves to be or practice, if it proves unhealthy or unsafe to the public, like fish pedicures, blades that they were using, all of that. Then it's on a selective basis that either staff would bring it up to you, or you would see something in the industry that you want to bring up at the board, that you could ban a specific thing for cause. And the wording, just that I've spoken with the staff on, is the board may ban the use of any device for use in the practice of cosmetology for good reason, or if it lies outside the scope of practice. So if a quote cosmetology device deals with diet, that's not one of the things that we cover. That's a device that's not able to be used in a cosmetology establishment and I spoke with inspectors about that. They worry about, especially in the esthetician area, where they're mixing medical practices with cosmetology practices. In current practice, by policy, we require, and by rule, by law, we require them to have only cosmetology practices within a particular room within a medical spa. If you're giving injections, those injections cannot be given in the room in which you practice cosmetology. You can't have a nameplate that says cosmetologist if you're injecting, even under the supervision of a doctor. You can only practice those services that are allowed under NRS 644. So that's, rather than saying we have to approve everything, how about if we only disprove or ban specific items for cause or those that lie outside the scope?
And how would that be brought before the board? Like if somebody was, let's say, doing injectables, would that particular cosmetologist be brought before the board, and then we would be able to help them correct their, their...
Or you can that, and you could also make it so that you ban, because NRS allows you to, you could have a board meeting where you ban that practice. We will not allow this. Banning on a one-off basis is much easier than saying that we're going to approve every device used in, that
and there are a lot of devices out there.
Administratively impossible to enforce this law.
That's what I thought. So hypothetically speaking, we're talking fish pedicures. there's no law that says you can't do it, so obviously it gets done, right? Somebody says, oh, this is a great idea, and they start doing it, and 20 salons start doing it, and then 50 salons start doing it. And then, so we would, at that point, under your current suggestion, we would not ban fish pedicures at that point, correct? Only should there be cause, because fish pedicures are now creating a health hazard, and that health hazard is documented, and then that's brought to us. Now,
in the case of fish pedicures, that process has already taken place. The FDA has investigated, has documented, has tested, have recommendations out that you're not allowed because you can't disinfect the fish.
Correct.
The fish are going to go from one person to another. So that's why it's not because of the fish. It's because the fish have touched one client. They can then touch another client without being disinfected. So
sure.
That's the reason. But to your point, Mary, that's exactly right. You don't just indiscriminately ban. It would have to come up as something that's brought before the board,
right,
by staff inspection team or board members themselves observing it. You could have gone to a conference and see something that looks very dangerous coming forward. You want to get ahead of it, or something that's been reported as a complaint or that's against the practice. Like you can't have invasive techniques. So by law, if you go below the dermis with any practice or procedure with a device, that can't be allowed in the state of Nevada as the laws are currently.
I'm inclined to agree with you that this would be better. That's a better use of this particular NRS.
That's not just, and I want to clarify, that's because my experience level is very minuscule in cosmetology. It comes from licensing and inspection, on how you administer this and how you would, what would be a better use of it.
Yeah.
So if somebody's using there's a new device that takes off moles or something, not moles, skin tags. That was the latest thing. So unless there's complaints about it, I mean, we can't have an inspector say, well, they're using this device and I find it to be creating a problem, or I think it could create a problem. It actually has to be creating a problem. I mean, where's that line?
If part of the documentation on, say for skin tags, if the skin tag goes below the dermis of the skin, then we could bring it before the board saying, we have regulations that say you can, a cosmetologist cannot perform any services that go below the dermis of the skin. I forget the exact wording, but it's like the upper dermal layer. So you can't do injections, you can't scrape down to where you get below the dermis, you can't do that. So if that particular device that removes skin tags goes below the dermis, then that's something we would bring before the board if we were aware of it, to have that device banned because it does not comply with the cosmetology practices as a primary.
But are we already able to say that to them?
You can. There's no specific law on banning. Unfortunately.
Got it. So this would then give us the ability to write an NAC that says we can ban, these are the following implements have been disapproved for use.
Correct. Without having to bring it before the legislature.
Because how it's now is they're supposed to bring the devices in and we're supposed to approve it, which never happens.
Correct.
And so then...
Except that one time with that guy with that red, the lights. Yeah.
But there are so many new devices coming out.
Right.
The way the law is written, if someone changed a brush to be some other model, we'd have to be approving every single model of that brush. Technically, the way the law is written today.
Okay, so could you read your proposed...
The proposal is NRS 644.095 would be banning a device used in cosmetology. And the text would read, the board may ban the use of any device for use in the practice of cosmetology for good reason or where the device is outside of the scope of practice for cosmetology. Outside of the scope of practice of cosmetology.
I think you did a good job on that wordage. Linda, do you have any comments?
No, I think that's good. I like his
I do
proposal.
too. I do too. Let's go forward with that. Any reason not to go forward? Hearing none, we move forward. Number 7, review and possibly formulate revisions for submission to the 2015 legislature to NRS 644.170, deposit of fees, receipts, expenditures, delegation of authority, and to take disciplinary action, deposit of fines imposed by boards, claims for attorney's fees, and cost of investigation. Subsection 1 may be antiquated and may need revision to reflect the current operating environment of the State Board of Cosmetology. As those of you that are on this board know, I've brought that one up a bunch of times, and I think it's time we change it. 170. Okay, so where it says all orders for payment of money must be drawn, wherever we put treasurer, I think we can do much the same by just putting the board. So in other words, item number 1 would say must be paid to the board, and strike the treasurer of, and who shall deposit them in banks, credit union, savings, loans, blah, blah, blah. The receipts for the uses of the board, and out of them must be paid all the salaries, all orders from payments of money must be drawn on the treasurer of the board and countersigned by the president. That's still correct, right? We do that, right? 4, in a manner consistent with the provisions of Chapter 622A of NRS, the board may delegate to a hearing officer or panel its authority to take any disciplinary action pursuant to this chapter, impose and collect fines, deposit the money in the banks. That's all correct. If the hearing officer... Okay, so I think in this entire 644.17, subsection 1, remove the treasurer of, and I'm good. I think that would be all we need to do so that that's more consistent with how business is done and will be done in the future. Any discussion, Ms. Treasurer?
No. I'm fine with that. I think it should. Well, because, you know, the treasurer, we sign the checks, I look at the deposits and so forth, but nothing's given to me personally.
Right.
Okay.
Any objections from staff?
No.
Okay,
No.
so be it. Last, moving on, comments by the general public?
Ours have left.
Any comments? All right, thank you very much for hanging out and being here. Appreciate your input and your participation. It's very important to us. So, thank you. All right, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I second.
Linda, you want to second that? All right.
Yes, I do.
Meeting adjourned.